and the masters of the universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!"
Welcome to the Objective Secured podcast. My name's Mike.
Hi, I'm Emma.
This is episode 55, Masters of the Universe. Because I am the Master of the Universe.
Do you think?
Well, sometimes when you're not here.
Even then. All right, so
we're going to be talking Masters today.
Bit of a trip down memory lane as we talk about where Masters came from and how it's evolved. And, of course, we're getting ready for the next Masters, which by the time this goes out will be
a couple of days away.
Yeah, 3-4 days away.
Because we're recording this a little bit early because our life is getting a bit hectic around this time of year with birthdays and Christmas coming up and then obviously Masters around the corner.
And getting ready for show and
so we're diving in.
We're being organised and prepared rather than Mike still trying to edit at 11:30 on Wednesday night.
We've had a couple of those.
Get it out on stick to our schedule.
Look, we've stayed on Wednesdays.
I know.
11:30 or
providing you're in WA.
11:59 Wednesday night is still Wednesday. It's only the East Coast and New Zealand that are getting it the next day, but they would be asleep anyway, so it's not a problem.
Not if we posted it at
9 a.m. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, as Emma said, we're going to be talking a little bit about the history of Masters 40K here in Western Australia, where it's been, some of the things we've learned, what 2020 for our tournament schedule looks like, and kind of some of the formats that we've been discussing in recent weeks around how we can better articulate to players and attendees what they can expect from an event. Before we do, we've got to cover a few little bits and pieces in terms of news and current affairs. Nothing that serious. We do have to say, if you're somewhere affected by a bushfire here in Australia, we wish you all the best and we hope you got out safe and well with all your family and everything important in life intact. That doesn't mean models, although I'm sure some of you will include that in that former statement.
I'm sure that there are some people at the moment mourning their models.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. But if you're listening to us, we hope that you are safe and well. And wish you all the best for rebuilding if you have lost anything important to you. And
at the time of recording, there haven't been any lives lost?
I don't think so, no.
So I know I've got some friends who have lost their entire, they're in houses and property and everything, but they've made it out with their lives intact. So at the moment they're grateful for that, but I'm sure that they're going to go through some grieving when it all hits home.
Yeah. So, wishing you all the best for that, guys and girls and everywhere around Australia who is suffering at the moment.
It's funny because Australia's on fire and England's been underwater.
Yeah.
Need to share the love.
I don't know about that. I think everyone would be quite happy with a very boring time of year at this time of year. So, so we're going to cover off some of the release stuff that we've seen happening for Games Workshop in the last little while.
Yeah, so you were really lovely and made the cut-off day for Masters today.
Yeah, a day of recording, yes.
Day of recording,
by the time you're hearing this, it's a week ago.
Wednesday the 13th, I think.
Yep. On purpose.
On purpose, so that the White Dwarf wasn't out.
Yeah, the date was very carefully selected.
So do you want to share why?
It actually goes back to the first Masters event, which we'll talk about in a second. But the date was specifically picked because I knew by picking a middle of the week date, there was no codex release possible on date. There's no chapter approved release or anything like that because they're always a Saturday. And I knew the White Dwarf wouldn't be out either. So it meant that anything that was released after that date wasn't going to be eligible to play. So it was a deliberate decision, and the reason for that decision we can cover in the main topic when we talk about the first year of Masters, because we actually had a very similar issue happen at Masters the first year.
We have talked about it a few times, that the reason that we do put that cut-off date and that, you know, we don't allow things if it's released the day before an event is not only to allow players the opportunity to, it's to allow all players the opportunity to see and learn what that new codex may mean.
It allows us as well to kind of get some tabs on it and try and get a copy of it if we need it, and kind of understand what it might mean for the event, because sometimes, particularly if the FAQ is not available straight after, that can be an issue. We've already got a problem with that, where the FAQ is still not available for Phoenix Rising, and there's two psychic powers that need an FAQ. One of them actually doesn't do anything at the moment because of the way it's worded.
Beautiful.
And the other one, if you read it one way, it's crap. If you read it the other way, it's far too good. And there's a very huge level of ambiguity as to how you can possibly read it. So that's a call I'm going to have to make, which I'm sure is going to be widely accepted and not whined about at all.
Yeah, no, I think that it's definitely the way that gamers normally go. We've still got 10 days for that FAQ to drop, though.
Yeah, but
And with FAQ, now I know that I should know this. With FAQs, when they come in, regardless of when they come in, we follow them.
Well, normally,
unless it's going to make a massive change
exactly.
to how armies are written.
They're a bit selective. Like if they drop it and then all of a sudden there's points changes and things like that, we won't take those. And we won't take errata where they're actually changing rules, but we will take FAQs. So in this particular case, answering that psychic powers ruling we would follow. Yeah. But the other one that erratas to fix the psychic power that at the moment does nothing wouldn't get used. Just make it a bit awkward.
It's tricky with that. Sorry, I know I'm derailing.
Well, this is all for the main topic.
Okay, would you like me to... I don't know if I'll be able to remember.
Go for it then.
I'm just saying, in general, not necessarily just about Masters, in general, it's tricky because, we do it that way, that if something is going to clarify, then we apply it straight away. But if there's a rules change, then we don't. But how that psychic power is read obviously really influences how people build an army.
Oh, yes, that one definitely. So I can't remember the name of it. I'll look it up while we're chatting. But it basically lets your caster do more damage in close combat.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm thinking is we wouldn't put changes in if it was going to change points or it was going to change how your army's going to be written. But this effectively would change how an army's going to be written, except at the moment, have you been public with how you'd be ruling that?
No, because I've only just had it brought to my attention this morning.
Oh, okay.
So the power is Witch Strike. Witch Strike has a warp charge value of 4, and this is why I'd be leaning on the side of the rubbish end, because it's a 4 or more on 2 dice isn't exactly hard to cast. If manifested until the start of your next psychic phase, add 2 to the damage characteristic of this psych as melee weapons. Sounds fine, and it's fine for a Farseer or a Spirit Seer or a single caster, but the Eldar have a unit called Warlock Conclave. The entire unit counts as a single psyker, which means that you could have 10 of them in a squad, and because they all count as a single psyker for the purposes of casting powers, you cast this power on them, and the whole squad gets the +2 damage. So if you have to nominate a model in the unit, and that model gets +2 damage for warp charge value 4, I'd never take the power to begin with, but it's fine.
Yeah.
If for warp charge value 4, it affects the 10-man squad, that's really good. Because that means that those models are 2 attacks each. Always, they're basically hitting on 2s. They always wound on 2s, and the damage is D3 +2 each.
Yeah.
So they, with 20 attacks, with a couple of other buffs to make sure that they hit and wound, will just obliterate big targets. They're not so good for killing tough units, but like you charge a knight or a land raider, and they fail a couple of saves, and you'll just cut it to pieces.
Yeah.
So... But because it's warp charge value 4, I'd err on the side of caution and say it's only going to be a single model affected rather than the squad.
The whole squad,
If it was warp charge 7 or 8, then I'd go, whole squad. But it's just too cheap at the moment. And we've got no answer. The other one that doesn't work is called Focus Wheel, which says it's warp charge value 6, and it's clear what this is meant to do. Select one friendly psyker within 6 of this psyker until the end of this phase. When you deny the witch, add 2. The problem is when you cast in your own turn, you never deny. So it's clearly meant to say until the start of your next psychic phase, which would then work through your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4 word changes and it works, but at the moment it does nothing.
Yeah.
So, bit frustrating. And I think everyone can understand what the intent for that is and what the answer will be.
Yeah.
But we haven't got that yet, so we can only go by what it says. Anyway, we're going to cover some of the news very quickly. I want to quickly touch base on Red Gobbo. I love this model. It's their Christmas release.
I do love that model.
He what you can't see in most of the photos is he's standing on a box of baubles with one foot and a box of hand grenades with the other.
Yeah. Which
is really cool. He has a whole bunch of Christmas stuff all over him. He's holding half of a Christmas tree with a star on top. He has a special Christmas scenario in the box with him, but he has no rules.
I really like that.
So he's purely an ornamental.
No, I think you can put him on the table and do with him whatever you want. And you can totally bring him to Masters and do that. Clearly, I'm joking.
Good. Some people take it. Some people will take that as gospel. That's why. Oh God, what are they going to do?
It's not even out yet, is he?
He's out now, and he is on sale until Boxing Day. So he's a cool little model. I'm sure that he'll end up in a lot of Orc armies just as a unit champion, or for Age of Sigmar, or just as you have to chop the gun off him. And for 40k, he'll just be a grot that ends up in one of the units just because he's cool.
He's going to be on our mantelpiece, or our Christmas tree. We can just drill a little hole in his head and make.
I think we'll get our son to paint him.
Oh, I so shouldn't have this idea.
Mm-hmm.
So just for people who are listening, because I'm going to make you listen to this story. So we have I really like Christmas. It's one of my things, and we do lots of Christmas activities. And we have a Christmas forest because one Christmas tree isn't enough. And some of our Christmas trees in our Christmas forest have different themes.
They do?
And so we've got a tiara theme, and we've got a holiday theme, and we've got a Disney theme. I think maybe we should have how many models can we pull out and drill holes in and put on a Christmas tree, and have a
model tree.
Have a miniature tree.
I reckon we can probably manage that. I've got a few spare models here and there, just one or two.
Yeah, I think one or two would maybe be close to a start.
Put him on top as the angel.
Well, how big is he?
He's on a 40mm base, so he's probably, by the time you put him all together, he's probably just over an inch tall, but he's on a 40mm base.
Oh, if we put him on a small tree, that'd work.
Yeah.
All right, that's our challenge.
So I can go and buy one now. Awesome.
Just so you know, I gave you permission to go and buy one of those ages ago, and that's why I didn't think that they were out yet, because I haven't seen my Christmas elf.
No, I haven't been to the store yet.
You were down at a store recently?
He wasn't out then.
Right, I'm hearing excuses.
So we'll have to go and pick one of him up, clearly. We've seen the previews now for Psychic Awakening Book 2, which is Faith and Fury.
I'm really excited, by the way, about my model Christmas tree.
We'll make sure we get a photo of it for you guys on the Facebook page.
Whether you want to see it or not.
It's coming. I'm just going to try and move on and stay on track so we get this intro under 40 minutes. So
I'm focused.
Faith and Fury is going to feature the Black Templars, as well as I think it's 6 of the Traitor Legions. Yes, it is. It's 6. Emperor's Children, World Eaters, Word Bearers, not Thousand Sons. Oh God, now I've got it wrong. Emperor's Children, World Eaters, Word Bearers, Night Lords, Iron Warriors, and Alpha Legion. I knew I'd get all 6.
Well done. Great big pat on the back to you.
We've seen the previews as of today, and I'm sure we'll have more by the time you actually hear this, of the Black Templars. They've even shown a grab from the data cards that are going to be released alongside a pre-order, which I got the Drahazar and the Jane Zar cards for Phoenix Rising.
Yeah.
This has shown Helbrick's profile. There's essentially no change to Helbrick, which is a bit disappointing for some Templars players, but they previewed some of the stratagems and some of the bits and pieces this morning, which is quite exciting. They look like they're going to be another interesting version of Space Marines to play. We've yet to see anything really for the Chaos Legions. There's a rumour going around at the moment that all of the cult troops will get 2 wounds, and that'll include the Death Guard and the Thousand Sons, which, if so, is going to make them really good. I think we will very much see the game change again after Christmas once this and Chapter Approved are out.
Mm.
No models yet, other than the Sorcerer that they previewed He looks cool, but he's not. Like, I think they've missed a beat with him. I feel like these single pose miniatures, they look good, but what would have stopped them putting a different backpack in there and giving him an option for a jump pack? Because Chaos Sorcerers can take jump packs. So I'm hoping that they go down that road. So they went through that period where everything's just single posed characters like the Winged Autarch and some of the Shadow Seers and some of the characters. Making that sprue a little bit bigger, like the Jane Zar or the Drahazar sprue, where it's a bigger kit, like a slightly bigger sprue, so it doesn't go in a blister pack, it goes in a small box, but you get 2 different gun options and a backpack option would be really nice. Sadly, I don't think that's the case with that particular miniature. So yeah, Psychic Awakening, Faith and Fury, Book 2, I think is due. I think it goes for pre-order in the next week or 2. So it might be out in time for Masters, not to play with, but I think it'll be out around the end of November.
To pass around the table and have a look at.
And if we get a copy, we'll obviously try and make sure we have one there. But we'll see. There's been a few other things that have been previewed. The Necromunda Dark Uprising stuff has been slowly turning up, including the unboxing that they did on the 4th of November. I really love the Zone Mortalis stuff they're releasing. They've even done a pack which is the tiles to make up the... so like the Forge World tile where they were 1 foot by 1 foot.
Yeah.
This gives you individual 2-inch squares so you can make up the tiles as you like. And then the terrain integrates with that so you can actually make Zone Mortalis tiles like you could in with the Forge World ones. The good part is it's all customizable, so you can make your own shapes and you can make each tile unique. The downside, I suspect, for us Australians is going to be the price.
Have you seen the price?
No, I haven't. I'm marginally terrified as to what that number will be.
I thought I'd seen it.
I'm not sure. I know that they...
I thought it was $495.
Oh, the big box?
Yeah.
No, see, I'm talking... Because they were going to release the terrain separately.
Oh, okay, right.
And they've since previewed the...
$450,
the tile set, which is... Because the one you get in the box is cardboard.
Oh.
The base... The table is cardboard. It's the thick cardstock that they've been doing for a lot of these box games. Whereas they've given you an option to buy the upgrade tiles, which are plastic.
Yeah, right.
I'm suspecting that's going to be fairly expensive, sadly. But it'll be interesting to see what we actually get. As it stands, though, the terrain looks amazing. It looks really, really cool. If you go and check out the Warhammer community page on the 4th of November, they've got an unboxing video there where it lays, like it folds out the... you can see it's a fold-out cardstock.
Yeah.
That they lay out. And then it goes through all the sprues and all the other bits and pieces. But I know that they previewed a set for the tiles, so I just don't know where that will be. I'm sure it'll be in one of the other previews after the 4th. Moving on, we're going to go...
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to see if I could see
If you find it, then we'll go back to it. In the meantime, they've also announced How to Become a Grand Master for Warhammer Underworlds. So this is 3 years in now to Underworlds, because Beastgrave's now with us.
Yes.
They've announced that the Grand Masters event is going to be happening in the 2020 Nova Open between the 2nd and 6th of September. You have to have won a Grand Clash, won a Grand Masters Championship, which obviously can't be done yet, or been randomly selected from our store championship winners pool. So for us in WA, we've had 2 Grand Clashes so far, and they've been won by the same person.
Yeah.
So his method is to go via the Grand Masters page, register, tell them which one he won, and then he'll be given a pass to come to the event. The second method, which is to win the Grand Masters Championship. What's interesting about this is if you win Grand Masters, they will pay for your travel and accommodation to go to the next one.
That is pretty...
So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So they've got 3 Grand Masters Championships at the moment scheduled. The 18th and 19th of January at Warhammer World. The 25th and 28th of March at Adepticon. The 29th to the 31st of May at the UK Games Expo. And the 30th to the 31st of May at the Warhammer Citadel Store and Cafe in America. So there's 4 of those Grand Masters Championships happening before the Grand Masters event. So if you are winning in Warhammer World in January, they're going to fly you to compete at the one in Nova, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, sweet.
The third way is obviously winning a store championship, which you enter on the website from November 16th onwards. So by the time you hear this, that website will be live.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can try and get a ticket to enter the Grandmasters at Nova. So a few different ways. It does mean there is the possibility for a couple of the other Australians to get a chance to go over and play. The only one who's guaranteed a spot is Ryan, because he has actually won a Grand Clash here in Western Australia.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a Grand Clash that was happening in Queensland. Did that happen?
I don't believe it did. Not yet.
It was supposed to happen at the end of October.
I haven't seen anything about it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I haven't seen anything about it either.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're normally pretty good at publicising what happens at the Mount Gravatt store.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. I'm not sure. The last sort of major thing I suppose we should cover is the Sisters of Battle, because the army set's been unboxed and previewed, and we've seen as of today, we've actually seen the first rules for Sisters of Battle on the table. The box set itself looks amazing, and I mean, there's 25 miniatures, plus you get the full codex, and from what I gather, the retail price here in Australia is $350. Sounds like a lot. You take the $80 book out of it, which is what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So you're now talking $280. You're getting 25 models, one of which is a character, one of which is the Penitent Engine. So those two models alone are going to retail for, like, the character is going to be a $40, $50 model. The Penitent Engine is going to be at least $50 or $60.
Yeah.
So we're already down to $150. You're then picking up the Repentia, 5 Repentia, 5 Seraphim, 10 Battle Sisters, and then the 3 Archoflagellants. The 10 Battle Sisters will be $70, $80. The Seraphim will be $50 or $60. Like, there is actually a decent saving to be had in buying this box. The only downside to the box is actually the codex, because you're going to buy it more than once. Like, as a player, if they'd released this without the codex, you would have people buying 2 or 3 of them.
Ah, right, I see what you mean.
Now, because the book's in it,
yeah.
like, am I going to buy more than one? Because the savings disappear if you've got the book. If, on the other hand, they don't release the book at the same time, which I'm assuming they will, then there might be a short-term period where you go, cool, who wants a codex?
Yeah.
Because I've got 4 of them. You know, and there will be players who do that.
Yeah,
Guarantee
definitely. Yeah.
And if that's the only way to get the codex in the short term, there will be players like myself who will go to eBay or go to, you know, the various places where people who buy one of these and break it up and just want the codex.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the release schedule is, though. The other interesting thing I noticed with this release for miniatures is the Repentia. The previews they showed us for the Repentia are different to the models they're previewing in the box.
Interesting.
Because they've doubled up on one of the styles.
Yeah.
But there was another variant they previewed with her 2 feet flat with the blade held across her like a woodsman's axe that's not here. So it'd be interesting to see whether
this is just an error in the photo,
or whether it's not going to, like, because it was a 3D CAD version that they'd showed us. So whether that model didn't actually get produced, or whether or not these are, like, whether they're giving you half the sprue and the box set maybe has more.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard to tell. Because of the sprues they've shown us do look like they are a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
I think these are going to be the snap fit style miniatures. They're not going to be true multi-parts. So, because, I mean, I'm looking at one of the sprues now. You can see there's an Archoflagellant plus some Sisters of Battle parts plus some Seraphim parts all on the one single sprue.
Yeah.
So I don't think these can be the actual multi-part kits.
I think a lot of these kind of get started boxes seem to be going to the snap fit models.
But it seems really strange when they've just done Phoenix Rising with the Howling Banshees and Incubi, and all the kits in that are full multi-part pieces. Yeah. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't become. I'm saying this. I hope this doesn't become the norm, because it stifles some of the creativity. Because single pose miniatures are harder to repose. But
so maybe it doesn't stifle it. Maybe it's giving you an opportunity to really push your skill level.
That's one way of looking at it. Except when they don't, like, sculpt part of the torso and you've got a big hole in the middle of it and
green stuff, and it's an additional way for you to add to your hobby skills by learning how to sculpt with green stuff.
Okay, I'll go with that for the moment. My biggest disappointment is the Seraphim, because they've used these stupid flying stands again. So when they released the Inceptors for Dark Imperium and the suppressors as well are on the same stand, instead of them doing a straight clear rod that just plugs into a hole, They're
You've got
these
those
arched ones
yeah.
that have this tiny little connection point,
Yeah.
and they don't actually slot inside the miniature to create a connection.
No.
So they look great in this high resolution, carefully studio shot.
Oh, in this high resolution, carefully studio shot that have been built and painted by professional artists, they look awesome. However,
They're just
the
not
reality
practical.
when regular people are trying to get their models onto those flying stands.
Yeah, it's so bad.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's kind of the issue with if you don't get it connected properly, the risk of them coming off and breaking and being damaged.
Well, the worst thing I've seen with these is if you put them on with super glue, I guarantee it snaps. I've seen so many times it snaps. And it'll often snap leaving part of the plastic, the clear plastic attached to the model, which means you're having to drill it out and mess about to try and get it connected. The only way to glue it on to make it stay on is plastic glue, which means you're then having to tape up the flight stand to keep it clear when you undercoat, because you have to use plastic to plastic without paint. So it just gets really awkward to mess about with, and I don't like these stands. At least if they went into, like the old ones do, a slot, then it's fine, because you can paint them separately and just slot them on and glue them on, and there's more surface area connecting them.
And also, I think if there's this is going to sound a bit silly, but if there's a slot, you don't have to worry about getting the angle right, because it has to go on right.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas with these ones, because there isn't that slot, if you don't get the angle right and you glue it, like especially with plastic glue, which of course melts, so it's quite hard to get that apart.
Well, you can't.
Yep, that would be quite hard. If you don't get the angle right, it's not going to stand up.
No. And you end up with off-balance models and all sorts of stuff. Another interesting thing about this box is they said we're including 12 white dice.
That's exciting.
And they are literally just 6-sided dice. No logos, no nothing on them.
Yeah.
They've called them miracle dice.
Okay. Do they roll only sixes?
No. I believe they've done this. So Games Workshop have always done the black, white, and red standard, 6-sided 12mm dice. Then they went to the current box sets. You get these sort of half-clear red dice with silver pips. So these feel like, hey, we've got some of, we're going to go back to plain white dice, because in the game, they have a mechanic that lets them perform miracles, which they've just released on the community site today. And you need to generate a pool of dice. So it feels to me like they've gone, well, everyone's going to have these clear red dice from all these releases, so we're going to give you a different color of dice. When in actual fact, if they at least put the logo on the number 6 or something, then you could have gone, these are my miracle dice, because they have these. As it stands now, most players are going to get 12 dice and go,
they're boring.
And I've got how many dozens of white dice already?
It was really funny. Growing up, we could never find dice in our house. Now, I've got 8 dice in my handbag.
And in the center console of the cars.
Yeah.
And
center console of the cars, there was about 300 dice. But
well, it's funny. I was clearing off the gaming table just today after the game last night with our son for his first game of 40k. I put all of my gaming dice away and still found 4 random dice that were inside scenery.
Yeah.
So
that does happen quite often.
Yeah,
actually.
It does.
But one good thing about the black and white dice is they are really easy to read.
Yes, they are. That is, they've made that mistake many times with some of the theme dice that they're just impossible to read.
Yeah. So although they're boring,
they're at least functional.
Yeah. Some of us have aging eyes. So I'm talking about you, clearly.
Oh, yeah, because I've got 20/20 vision and you wear glasses.
Yeah. That's got nothing to do with my age.
Oh, okay. They've also given us a really cool transfer sheet. This is one of the first transfer sheets that includes, I think there's 5 different orders. Martyred Lady, Ebon Chalice, Bloody Rose, Sacred Rose, Argent Shroud, and Valorous Heart. So what's that?
That's 6.
6. So they've given us all 6 of the main orders on one transfer sheet, and there's enough there from the looks of it for 20 sisters, which is really cool. Might even be 24 now I look at it, because there's the Sister Superior ones as well for the squad leaders. Then there's generic Imperial symbols. There's even script that you can put down on their parchments and stuff, which is cool, and some of the big ones for tanks on top of that. So
they're not 7 there.
The Cult of the Martyred Lady has a white version with a red skull and then a red version with a white skull.
Okay.
Depending on where you're putting them, because they're normally black and red. So if you're putting them on the black power armor, you want the white with the red. But if you're putting it on, anyway. But it's cool that they've actually thought about that and given us a sheet with all of the orders on it,
Mm-hmm.
because all too often, like if you think about some of the transfer sheets, you either don't get them in the boxes anymore, or you do. Like the Space Marine ones all come with ultramarines, which is of no use.
Great if you want to do ultramarines.
Yeah, but if you're painting them as Dark Angels or Salamanders or anything else like that, it can be quite hard to get those transfers without going to Forge World or paying some fairly serious dollars. The box does look really cool, though. The Sister Superior, the Canoness, that they gave away at one of the previews last year's in this box as well, with her bionic leg. Here's an interesting one for you. It covers modelling for advantage. This is a real fun one. The Penitent engine that's in here, I actually prefer the old metal version, which I've got one of. The old one comes on a 60mm base.
Mm-hmm.
The new one comes on a 50mm base.
Oh.
I
Wow,
cannot.
that's a big model.
Oh yeah, this thing is dreadnought sized. It's 4 inches tall. It's huge. I can't think of another instance where a model changeover has gone down in base size as opposed to up. All the Demon Princes went up. All of the Aspect Warriors recently have gone up. The Space Marines have gone up. This one's going to come down. And that's going to make it really awkward because those metal Penitent engines...
They're not going to stand up on a 40mm
They
base.
They don't fit on a 50mm base.
50mm, sorry.
I can guarantee they don't.
Yeah.
They also have to be pinned to high heaven because they're metal, and they never went together well because they're ball sockets and appalling to build. So as a TO, at what point do you then go, well, the old ones are fine on 60s because that's what they were supplied with because that's what they fit on. And we've already got one player here in Perth going like, I've already got 6 of them and they're metal. What do I do? And I've gone, leave them on the 60s. But...
And there's like a whole conversation around this, which I know we've started before, but how old are the old models?
I actually think the Penitent engines are a third... I don't think they were in the second ed. I don't remember them being in the second ed book, so I think they must be a 3rd edition release, which is sort of 99, 2000 era.
So these models are 20 years old.
Yeah, they would be.
So what is the lifespan of a model?
Yeah.
So after 20 years... Now, I don't agree with this. I actually think if you own the models, you should be able to play with the models that you own, and I don't think that to come to one of our events, you should have to buy new models if you already own them.
Yeah.
But, so I'm just going to put that out there. But devil's advocate, what is the lifespan? Should you still be able to play with a model that's 20 years old when there's a new version of it available?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got models that I was using last night that were... The Farseer that I had on the table is from Rogue Trader. He was... I couldn't pin down a date for him, but he is either very, very late 80s or like the 90, 91 maybe. I don't 100% know when that model was officially released. The Guardians that I had on the table were from 3rd edition. The Wraith Lord, I think he's a 2nd edition release. The Banshees were 3rd edition. The Wraith Guard were 3rd edition. I think the most new model on that... Actually, even the Dire Avengers were 3rd edition those last night, even though I've got newer ones. They were just the first ones I found when I put them out to play. The newest model on that table, I think, is 4th edition.
Yeah.
Whereas Lachlan, his entire army, bar the Venerable Dreadnought, is essentially 8th edition. So, yeah, it's it creates an interesting... Like you've just said, what's the answer? And,
well, do you kind of think, well, you know what, that 20 years... You've had your money's worth out of playing with that model. It's time to update now and get one that fits within the new rules. And, like if you were playing a sport and they change the uniform, you can't wear last year's uniform because that's the one that you've got.
Yeah.
If they change, I don't know, if they change a ball size in some kind of ball sport that I can't think of, or the weight of a ball in t-ball or softball, baseball, you can't go
like Formula One when they changed from V8s down to smaller size engines and capacities and that sort of stuff. It does.
I clearly have no sporting references, but if they change the rules, do you have to change your equipment?
Do you have to? And that's the thing. The expectation from the competitive scene, particularly in regards to, I'm just bringing up a picture. That's the original one there. That's the new one there. So the new one...
Interesting that the original one looks quite significantly smaller and is yet on a bigger base.
I actually think the new one looks like it's going to be smaller.
No, side by side like that. To me, they don't look...
Well, that's a 50 mil base, and that's a 60 mil base.
Yeah, okay, right.
So I actually
make them to scale. That's not to scale.
Well, see, the other interesting thing is the original one gave you a choice of 2 pilots, because this is obviously piloted by someone who's condemned to death.
Okay, obviously.
It's penitent. You're trying to atone for your sins. Penitent engine. The original version gave you 2 pilots, both of them crucified. One was female, one was male.
Right.
All the previews we've seen of this particular model for the new release are only male for the pilot.
Sorry, that's interesting. Where my brain went was that, yes, I think you're right in that model, the new model looks like it is going to be smaller because...
Based on where, like, her feet are.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But then with scale creep...
Is it going to be the same size? Yeah. So... It's
not so much scale creep, it's scale leap.
Yeah, in some cases it has been, yeah. So the question then becomes, the community has assumed that particularly the greater demons are a great example of this, when the greater demons went from 3 inches tall with wings to 6 inches tall with wings, the community at large basically went, if you want to run a greater demon, get the latest model, and the old models become demon princes. Because they're the same size as demon prince. What happens with this? I as a TO, I have to stand here and go, well, they're penitent engines.
Yeah, it is what it is.
And
we're not the hobby police.
Yeah.
We're really big on the fact that we don't want to tell you how you...
We want to do as little as possible of that.
Yeah, and we don't want to say, well, this isn't a cheap hobby. Now, compared to Lego, I actually do think it is a cheap hobby, and it's one of the reasons that I'm encouraging my son to get into this.
Compared to a lot of luxury hobbies, it's actually pretty affordable.
Yeah, it is. And I can talk about this compared to Lego. I can soapbox on that for hours at the moment, but I won't, I promise. But it is an expensive hobby, and there are lots of barriers to entry for this hobby. I don't want us to come and say, well, no, if there's a latest model available, you need to be using the latest model. Partly because I don't want to put up any more barriers, but also because what happens if you prefer the older model?
Yeah. So this...
I really have no answers here.
The penitent engine is, in fact, the original model is, in fact, from 3rd edition, having just done a quick Google search. I didn't think it was 2nd. It hasn't given me an exact date, but it is definitely a 3rd edition release. So that's been around now...
20-ish years.
Yeah, around 20 years, give or take. So yeah, as a TO, we're going to have to make that call once we see the new plastic one. I'm just praying that they're roughly the same height. If they're both roughly the same height and they don't have an aura, which I don't think they will, then I'm just kind of going
having an extra 5 mil on either side of the
I'm not going to lose too much sleep over that.
No.
So because they're armed the same way, which is nice, and as long as they look basically the same size, then it won't be an issue in my mind.
Now, what is the benefit of a model being on a bigger base? Because I know the benefit of them being on a smaller base, obviously you can stack more up.
There's pros and cons for both, really.
Yeah.
The biggest concern with bigger bases is you take up more space on the table, which means you can a squad of 10 models on 25 mil bases compared to 32 mil bases. Because you have a 2-inch coherency between every model, you actually take up a much bigger space because you can't come within 1 inch of any model either. So you can use them for denying things like deep strike. Mathematically speaking, if you go from a 25 to a 32 mil base, the area of effect of an aura is significantly increased. The radius obviously doesn't change because it's still a 6-inch from the edge of your base, but that 7 mil of diameter
it does.
Creates a bigger circle, and the small circle in the middle that you take out for the base that actually occupies the aura effect, that generates the aura effect, the increase, once you take it away from the big circle, is still an increase.
Yeah.
So mathematically speaking, it changes the area of effect. The practical application of that change is very minimal most of the time. If you go from a 25 to a 60 mil base, that's a big thing. 25 to a 40 is reasonably significant. 25 to a 32, it's not that bad.
Except for the whole aura thing.
Well, but like I'm saying, with the aura, the practical applications of that change, are different because you still got a 12-inch diameter. One's getting 25 mil added to it, the other's getting 32 mil added to it in terms of diameter. So the circle is by its very nature bigger. But because you only need one model from your unit to be in the range most of the time, you're never going to be clustered and fill that circle. If you follow my thought process there, I don't know if I'm making that very clear.
Not so much.
So yeah, the practical applications of a bigger base are primarily the area of space you actually physically occupy, particularly in ruins, and then the auras and those sorts of things.
Okay.
Whereas going to smaller bases obviously lets you fit in places that you potentially shouldn't go. You can fight with more models because the 25mm bases are technically shorter than 1 inch because it's 25.4 millimeters to an inch. And if you're within 1 inch, you get to fight, which means you get an extra rank of models that can fight. 2 extra ranks in some cases, depending on how you stack your assaults.
Yeah.
So there are pros and cons both ways. And that's part of the reason I went down the road of starting to try and work out a basing guide.
Yeah.
It's just not practical to apply, which is why the project never really got anywhere, because I started trying to work all this stuff out and went, it's...
6 of one, half a dozen.
Yeah, the net result is essentially 0 most of the time anyway. I reckon most of these Sisters of Battle are going to be on the new 28mm bases, looking at them, because I didn't think they'd be 32s. But I also, looking at the way they're posed, I didn't think they were 25s. And now that I've got my Howling Banshees and Incubi on 28s, which were released with Warcry, I am going to bet money these are 28s.
Yeah.
If they're not, I'd be very, very surprised. So, yeah, interesting release. I really like the models. I think they will integrate really well with existing Sisters players, although I suspect the scale creep will be readily apparent.
Yeah.
Because the Sisters of
20
Battle...
years.
Well, no, the original Sisters are from 2nd Ed, so they're going to be even worse. So we'll try and get a photo if someone picks up one of these boxes so that I can get a shot of them beside my 2nd Ed Sisters of Battle army.
So you're going to try and remember to take your 2nd Ed Sisters of Battle to Masters, and hopefully someone will bring their sisters.
Well, the problem is the box set isn't available for Masters.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the whole point. I'm focused. I'm there.
But we will try and get a photo with the new plastics when they come out, just so we can show them off and kind of go, here's what they were, here's what they are now. Because I think that'll be an interesting comparison to what happens over... I mean, those Sisters of Battle must be 94, 95, something like that. So they'll be 25 years old, give or take.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how much the scale has changed in that time.
Significantly, I'm sure.
We've also seen the preview for the rules, like I mentioned, with the Miracle Dice. Here's an interesting mechanic for you. So you get 1 Miracle Dice at the start of each of your own turns. And you can get a Miracle Dice. There's 3 or 4 different ways you can get them. But when you get a Miracle Dice, however it's generated, you have to roll it. So if you roll a 4, that dice stays as a 4 and it gets put to one side. And then when you come to a point where you have to roll a dice, you can elect to not roll that dice and instead substitute the miracle die. So if you roll a 1 on that miracle die, you might go, I'm never going to use that. But you use that for things like morale, where you need to roll a 1 to pass. Here's my 1. If I roll a 6 to kill... if you've got 6 wounds left and I've done a d6 damage, I need to roll a 6 and I kill you. Here's my 6. You've only got 4 wounds left. I'm not going to use my 6. I'm just going to use my 4. Or if you desperately need to hit and you only hit on 4s or 5s. I think it's a really interesting mechanic. And at first I thought it's not going to be too overwhelming because you get 1 at the start of each of your own turns. And then if one of your characters dies, you get 1. If you deny a psychic power without using any of the special rules that you can get, you get 1.
And they can only be used once each.
They're used once and then discarded. But in reality, I think I worked it out, you can get up to 8 dice per turn because you can get 1 dice per phase. And if you can somehow... So in the... say you have a character die in your opponent's shooting phase, then you have a character die in your opponent's assault phase. And in the psychic phase, you deny one of their psychic powers. That's 3 dice straight away. Then there's similar ways of getting them in your turn. So you can get like 8 dice in a battle round. Which, if you can stack an army and build it that way to generate those dice, I think there's going to be a balancing point of where you are giving up too much to get those dice. But at the same time, that makes things like the Exorcist that was, I'm assuming it's still going to be random shots. I really want to shoot 5 times, minimum 5 times this turn. Okay, I'm just going to shoot. It's actually been in Age of Sigmar for a little while now. One of the Chaos, I think it's Zench. I can't think what it's called now. There's a Zench faction that has a similar mechanic, and I think it's a really good way of bringing the Acts of Faith rules from the older editions of the game, which used to be these cool things you could do. Now they can do them by basically divine intervention, which is quite cool. I quite like the idea of it, and I think it's going to make Sisters really interesting to play and also very good on the table. But I think after this many years of like 25 years since their last models, I think it's quite nice to get a proper update with some good rules.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, that's all we've got for the news, unless you've got anything else to bring up.
I don't, but thank you for asking.
Skulls, very quickly. Skulls 40k has been and gone.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to Tyson winning with his Imperial Garden Knights. Pipping Dave, Sly Dave, both of them went 4 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Never played each other. They were the only two undefeated, so they would have naturally played in round 5.
Yeah.
But Tyson picked up the win because he had more battle points.
Awesome. Congratulations, Tyson.
Yeah.
And Skulls is happening the
same weekend as Masters. So they've got Infinity over 2 days. Age of Sigmar is that weekend. I think Bolt Action is that weekend as well. They had War Machine and Malifaux at the same time as 40k on the 9th. And then they've got a whole bunch of game systems on the 23rd and 24th.
Yep.
All right. We'll be back in a second, and we're going to talk the history of Masters and what 2020's events might look like. All right, let's talk Masters. Masters
was our very first event.
As OBSEC, yeah, it was. We'd TO'd some other events prior to that. We'd done some for Outpost 6030 back in the early 2000s. I ran Skulls 2005 off the back of a bet, which was a bit ill thought about at the time. But
that's not like you.
Look, no one expected me to win it 3 years in a row, but I did, me included. So that was the reason that was my first major. That was my first major event that I'd run. We'd run some little ones for Outpost prior to that.
Yeah.
And then around, I want to say 08.
Ultimates?
Yeah, 07, 08, somewhere in that space. I helped launch Ultimates with Luke and JJ.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did that the first year, and then I got to compete in it a couple of years in a row, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Ultimates wrapped up, I think that was 2013.
I think it was 2013.
Maybe 2014. I'm not sure. I think it was 2013. We had a gap in the community. The community was in a bit of a slump at the time as well. And I had some mates around. We were all sat out the back chatting and having some drinks and being a bit lazy, basically whinging about 40k. And the state of the tournament scene, and the fact it was the same 20 people going every time, and there was no variety, and it was in a bit of a low point from a community point of view. Because
40k was dead.
Well, I didn't say that.
No, but everybody else did. Well, not necessarily everyone else who was sitting around the table at the time.
There was certainly a perception of that, yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a perception of that within the community.
And it's interesting because it wasn't just 40k.
Call it a community, to be honest.
It was basically every game system. War Machine was still doing well at the time. But with that end of year event gone, it definitely had an impact on the attendance of other events because you had to qualify to go to that event. And so Emma basically said, come on, prove it. There's how many of you sat here right now who could play? Let's,
Well, yeah, that was it really. With kind of going, there's nobody to play. There's the same 20 players. And I just went, well, you know what, if there's nothing available, then create something. And it wasn't we need to create something. It was you need to create something. And, there's nobody here. There's, there isn't the community for it. And I was like, well, that's just rubbish. There's how many people sitting around here? There's X number more that I can name, and I don't know anyone in the community. Like, I'm sure between everyone, if we put our heads together, you'd be able to come up with 40, 50 people who'd be able to come out and play, which was laughed at. There was no way 50 people were going to come to an event.
No. That was certainly the perception at the time.
It was definitely the perception around that table.
Yes. We started working with Mitch at Warhammer Fremantle. He was basically the primary supporter from that part of the hobby community in terms of store management. And he helped us publicise the event and get some of his regulars attending, and they obviously spread the word to the other stores. And that weekend was the 28th and 29th of November, 2015 from memory.
Yep.
And we ended up with 66 players, I think it was that weekend. 64 or 66.
I actually thought it was 67. I thought we did have an odd number of players because we had to have a ringer.
Or maybe it was 65. I don't know. It was in the mid-60s.
Yeah.
And we were out at not South Perth, Canning Town Hall on Albany Highway in Cannington. Over 2 floors.
Yep.
With air conditioning that didn't work on the ground floor but worked on the mezzanine, which was where the bar was, so everyone was keen to be on the mezzanine. And we borrowed terrain. I mean, we had probably 7 or 8 tables that we'd...
Because that was the thing. Like, it was all well and good with this idea of, okay, well, we'll run an event. But then the logistics of it, like, great. What are we going to do for terrain for, if we do... Say we do get 30 people who turn up, how are we going to come up with 15 tables worth of terrain?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we got 60-something people...
Yeah.
And had to come up with 30-something tables of terrain.
So we basically spent all the money from that event, and then some that didn't come from that event, to buy as many of the boards as we possibly could, as many of the tables as we possibly could. We bought some fat mats as well at the time.
Did a really bulk order of fat mats.
Yeah, we sold... as a community, we bought 100 fat mats, and we, I think, ended up with 8 or 10 of them at the time, the first run.
That was probably 7 to match the 7 tables of terrain we had.
No, I remember buying more mats than we actually needed because I was hedging and trying to make sure we had extra. We didn't have enough mats for every table, though.
No.
We didn't.
I'll come to that in a minute.
Yep. Then we have to thank Outpost 6030, who supplied a big chunk of the terrain for that weekend. I want to say it was 20 boards worth of terrain. It might not have even been 20. It might have been 15 or 16.
I don't think it was 20 because we also had
Gary,
Dan Newton brought some stuff.
Gary Daniford as well.
Gary Daniford. Richard brought some. Mitch brought
a couple from his stores as well,
Freo.
yeah.
So, I mean, and that was the thing as well, that when we were talking about it, you were going, there's absolutely no way we can do this. We don't have the resources to be able to do it. And I remember saying, well, ask for help. Other people have this stuff. If it was you and somebody asked, could we borrow a table worth of terrain, you'd go, sure, here it is, you can use it. Ask for help. If we ask, people will loan it to you. And so you did, and people did loan it to us.
Yeah. And that event was an interesting one because I think we probably had 2/3 of the table. Maybe it was a bit more than 2/3. It wasn't every table, but just about every table either had a fat mat on it or had a Realm of Battle on it.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of the terrain was painted. Not all of it, but the vast majority was. It was only a handful of stuff that wasn't. And it was funny that by the end of that weekend, we had people complaining that they weren't playing on a fat mat or on a Realm of Battle, and the terrain wasn't painted on that table that they were playing on.
Yeah, which is compared to what had been around previously, and Outpost terrain has certainly come up in leaps and bounds since.
Well, they've retired a bunch of the boards that we used that weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that event was really interesting in that everyone was willing to live with what was available until we tried to do more.
Yeah, we tried to raise the bar and then turned out that the bar wasn't high enough.
Yeah.
So, which I will admit, I still find frustrating. I still find it really frustrating that the bar had been really quite low. So, I won't name which event it wasn't. It wasn't one that was run by Outpost or Crags that people aren't around anymore. But the terrain was made out of toilet rolls.
Yeah.
And pipe cleaners. And the toilet roll holders, the cardboard tubey things, not the actual toilet roll. But, the cardboard tubes hadn't been painted and that was terrain, and that had been fine. And then we had
genuine plastic terrain from Games Workshop, and
as well as stuff
homemade
stuff as well. But it was a pretty good quality compared to what had been around. And yet at the end of it, I remember reading one of the feedback forms and somebody was complaining about the fact that there weren't fat mats on all the tables.
when like painted MDF was the standard.
Even prior to that, there'd been events where they'd been running on we've got just a plain MDF board in front of us at the moment, but they were run on boards like this. It wasn't even painted.
Yeah, Ultimates at the time had stepped up the standard, but in a very limited capacity because it was an invite-only event. So
a small event, yeah.
And props to Luke for the standard he did set for the terrain and the boards there. But at the same time, the scale of this event was...
Yeah, we went from nothing to
60-plus players.
Something players in a very short amount of time.
So this was 2015.
What didn't we have at that event, Michael?
Table numbers.
Table numbers. So I've told this story so many times. I'm sorry, you've probably heard it a whole heap of times.
This is why you're involved in these events.
This is why I'm involved in these events. So prior to...
So it's not my fault. I suppose technically it is my fault.
No, it is definitely your fault. So I was never supposed to be involved in OBSEC. This was Michael's baby. He was supposed to be... this was his stuff, and I was having nothing to do with it. He has never wanted me as part of his hobby at all. It's
cheerleader.
No, I've never even been to cheer on.
No, you
really.
haven't.
And then because you won events without me going, you were like, well, I don't want you to come because I won that one when you didn't come. If you come, you might be bad luck. So I was fine with that. I was never supposed to be involved at all. And then as we were getting closer to the first Masters, I was starting to get somewhat apprehensive. And when I get apprehensive, I do micromanage. And so I make lists, and then I pull my lists out and I make more lists from that, and I check things off, and everything's labelled and organised and everything. And that is not how you work, is it?
No.
No. How do you work?
I'm explaining it in my head right now.
Yeah, that's exactly how he works. Everything is in his head. And when I would ask something, he goes, it's all right, it's in my head. Like, yes, but you know what? I can't see what's in your head. I have no idea what's in your head. I had to keep reminding myself, this is not my circus, these are not my monkeys. And so I wasn't even supposed to attend the first Masters because it was your thing. I was going to be home looking after our kids. My parents would be doing the food.
And the bar. Yep.
And I was staying home. Sort of didn't work.
No, you did end up coming down.
I did for most of the day, and then I went home while lunchtime happened and came back again in the afternoon. But yeah, one of the first things was we've got 60 plus players in this room, 30 plus tables, no table numbers. So then we were ending up trying to rig up table numbers by writing on bits of paper and sticking them on with sticky dots that anytime anybody walked past or brushed past ended up sticking to their trousers, and people would be walking around wearing number 34.
Yeah, neoprene doesn't like stickers.
No. So we learnt from that.
Yeah. We were using a manual scoring suite on that weekend as well called War Score, which was its own set of challenges because we had to get manual data sheets handed in by players for scoring.
Yeah, but one of the biggest challenges for that is if you don't know Michael and... if you don't know him in person, I'm guessing you can still believe this. He does like to chat quite a bit. So he's trying to input scores, and he's literally got a table surrounded by people who are coming up and chatting to him, and he can't think why he's struggling to get the scores input. So we did learn after that, when the TO is at the TO table entering data, don't come and talk to me.
Go away.
Yeah.
And most people are, particularly these days, once they've been to one or two events, if we're sat behind the computer mucking about, they tend to come up,
stand
there and just kind of pause, and then when we make eye contact and go, yeah, what's up, then they'll approach and talk to us. Because we did have a scoring error at the end of round 5 that meant I had to re-input all of because I was at the time, at the end of each round, making a copy of the file, saving it before I hit next round to go to round. And so I just finished the data entry for round 5, hadn't saved it, and then managed to get a keying error to happen because someone was talking, and then lost the entire data. So then had to go back and rekey it all to do the final round, which was fairly stressful at the time. Yeah. We also had to lug boards upstairs and all the terrain upstairs.
There was a little elevator.
Disabled access.
I wouldn't say dumbwaiter type thing, but it was.
It was for wheelchair access.
Yeah, it was.
Getting the stuff up and down that was a challenge.
Yeah, because the boards didn't actually fit in that.
No, they didn't.
Because that's when we were still using the 3x4s.
Yes, it was. And we went in the night before, unknown to the council at the time. I said at the time.
They don't know now either.
Well, there were people in there who'd hired the hall, and they were quite happy to let us move around and unload stuff, so that's fine. And, yeah, it was a pretty full-on weekend. My birthday was that weekend as well.
It was, and that was also where OBSEC Orange came from.
Yes. For those who are vaguely interested, the reason that we wear bright orange at tournaments these days as our TO shirts is off the back of that event. We had a sponsor for the first one from Secret Weapon Miniatures. And part of the deal from Secret Weapon was, we're going to send you a bright orange T-shirt with our logo on it. We want you to wear that T-shirt. Not a problem. If you're going to give me free stuff to give away, I will wear that T-shirt. No problems. These days, it's more like we'll put your logo on our T-shirt because that way we can, have our logo. We didn't really have, well, we did have a logo at the time, but...
We did have a logo. We certainly didn't have shirts and things like that.
So that first day, I was in bright orange, like you see me these days at tournaments.
Yeah.
And then on the Sunday, which was actually my birthday... Pete and Glenn and a bunch of the group of friends of mine came together, and they were all wearing the same T-shirt. It was the Star Wars Darth Vader T-shirt, which actually I put on a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I did.
Because it now fits me again.
Yeah, well done.
And that was the T-shirt I wore on day 2, which is obviously primarily black with a
dark coloured pattern on the front,
and with Darth Vader on the front. And all of a sudden, it got very hard to spot me when I was moving through the terrain and the boards and the crowd.
Yeah, I did find that on that first day, and I'd spent most of my time on the first day up on the balcony near the bar. But yeah, so from the balcony, I could find you at any point in the day. I could find you at anywhere you were in the room. So it was awesome. And then you went to wearing black. I'm like, this is not working so well, because I don't know if you've noticed it, but most gamers tend to wear black or dark grey.
Yep.
Or dark grey. Those are pretty much the only options.
Yeah.
There's occasionally...
It's the Batman colour scheme. Lego Batman.
Yeah, less of the bright yellow part.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So off the back of that was, we're going to need to get some orange shirts.
Yeah.
And that's where that came from. So now when you see us walking around, it's actually off the back of some learning we did on day 2.
It's also where, so the first Masters is why we now do table service with the drinks cart at events, because the bar was upstairs and the air conditioning was upstairs and it was stinking hot downstairs. It was taking players too long to get from downstairs
to get upstairs to get a drink to come back down.
Yeah, and so it was really difficult because we're not good at sales and we don't want people to think that we're being pushy. So the idea of taking around a drinks trolley felt like we were being really pushy for people to buy more drinks. And that wasn't the intention. It was around going, look, we're trying to save you time getting upstairs. So to make that easier for you, we filled this with drinks. If anybody wants one, then sweet. If not, that's no issue either. But then, so what was interesting was on the feedback form that we sent out, yes, people complained about the fact that some tables didn't have fat mats, but so many people said how awesome it was to have table service with drinks. Now, we never would have done that again because we've never used that venue again. And we only did it because it was upstairs and the extra time it took. So we wouldn't have done the table service again because it feels like we're being too pushy. And I still struggle with that at times. And even
it's
though
an expectation these days
now,
for some of the veterans in particular.
Yeah, that's it. And it's funny, when I go around for the first time, the response from people is, there's alcohol at this event and you're going to bring it to me? Where have you been all my life?
Well, is the slushy machine for 2019 on wheels?
It's not, no. No.
They could order one from you, could bring it back.
They can definitely do that.
We got slushies in 2019. So
yes, for 2019 Masters we do, yeah. And going forward for the rest of our events.
So that would have been 7th edition?
Yeah, it was 7th.
I think it was 7th.
It was definitely 7th because I've only been around for the start of 8th.
Well, I'm just trying to work backwards and go, I remember playing 6th edition at Ultimates. So I think, and I know that 5th edition was, 6th edition kicked off in 2012. And it was only a 2 or 3 year edition. So it must have been at the very start of 7th.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
This is also, the other thing we learned from this event was the deadline for lists versus the deadline for codex and rules releases. Back then, we had a 4-week cutoff for rules and a 2-week cutoff for codexes.
Yep.
that makes no sense for starters. It did at the time. I don't know why, but it did. So we had a long lead time in that. And unfortunately, we saw the Tau Codex drop just after the lists had been to be submitted. And it completely revamped the Tau army. It added a whole bunch of new units. And I think that was the release of the Ghost Keels, among other things.
Just so you know, 7th edition of 40Ks was May 24, 2014.
There you go.
So we were on 8th. Oh, sorry.
7th.
We were on 7th.
Yeah. So in the end, we agreed to allow the Tau Codex in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much happened every year where we've had a release around the Masters event where we've either had to say yes or no to it. And it's one of the reasons why the list, and look, to be fair, Down Under Pairings has also helped that because the lists go online.
Yeah.
So you're not chasing emails, you're not chasing players. It's all in one spot, which makes it really easy as a TO to track, which is why we put the lead time so short. So you've only got, in this case, the lists are actually due today at time of recording.
Yeah.
So it just means that anything released after today is a no-no. The other problem we also had is that in other years we've also had lists that are due on a specific, normally on a Saturday, and all the releases are now Saturday. So we've had situations where the release is Saturday and the lists are due Saturday night, and people are trying to write army lists for a book that's dropped on the day.
Yeah.
So we've deliberately either tried to do it on the Friday so it's before the book drops, or in this case it's on the Wednesday because I knew White Dwarf was coming. So we tried to avoid White Dwarf as well for Masters. So we actually learnt a lot from that first event.
We did learn a huge amount. The first thing was you can't be trusted to do these things by yourself. The second thing was I apparently have no ability to say no. Stay out of your hobby.
You say no often enough when I get the credit card out to buy things.
This is true.
So, first Masters was done. Dennis, I'm not going to try and say his surname.
Vukovic.
I don't think it's... no, it's Vukez. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. I'm really sorry, Dennis, if you're listening. I've never been able to say it. He won it with Crawford Eldar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually... On the Perpetual Trophy, it'll actually say Eldari. Eldari didn't exist in 7th. It was actually Eldar.
So why would you put that?
Because for reference frame for where the game is, it's... I also don't know whether it was just pure Craft Worlds or whether he had Dark Eldar allies or anything else in the army.
I'm sure we've still got the...
It's 2016. They were paper lists. They weren't emailed. They were manual submissions.
How'd they get them to you?
They dropped them off at stores and I picked them up. So I actually don't think I've got a copy of that army list.
I'm sure we've still got the paperwork
Oh, look,
somewhere.
I'm sure we've got it somewhere, but...
We're not digging through for it.
No.
Yeah.
So he'll be on the Perpetual Trophy as Eldari. I know it had a Wraith Knight and Scatterbikes in it. I actually do think it was Craft World, and I might even send him a message before I get it printed and see if he can tell me.
The reason that I would prefer it to say Eldar rather than Eldari is because that's where it was at the time.
That's true.
Now, I know we're making this trophy now 5 years in, but if we were just adding on the 2019 to a
it would have
Perpetual
said
Trophy, it would have said Eldar.
Yeah.
So I think that's more accurate to where we were at the time. And, yeah.
Well, the trophy's also only got so many letters of character space to put the year, his full name, and his surname is quite lengthy. So I'll have to get in touch with him and find out exactly what... it was either Craft World Order with Dark Eldar at the time, or it was just Craft World Order.
Yeah.
And 7th edition makes me think it was just Craft World, but I'll hit him up.
Yeah.
So then we moved into the 2016 season where we ran our first Blood, where we ran our first Line Breaker and WATC and doubles and a lot of the staple events that we run today all happened in 2016. No show that year.
No.
Show was still... That was actually a pipe dream at the time. It was floated in 2016.
Yeah. So with 2015,
Yep.
before we do move on, it was very much a hobby-focused event for Masters.
Yeah, it was essentially 60% generalship and 40% soft scores.
But it was really around trying to bring all elements of hobby together in one room.
And I think from memory, the ticket price for that event was $65, $70.
I think it was 65.
65?
Yeah.
So yeah, 2015 65, 2019's 80. So it has gone up, but also the venues that we have these days are
significantly more expensive.
But they're also nicer and better.
Yeah, they are.
like the one we're using
And we've
this
got-
year works with air conditioning
Yeah.
and, running water.
That had running water.
Not downstairs, it didn't.
It did in the toilets. I think that's the most important. Where else do you need running water?
Oh, a lot of guys these days, particularly in the summer months, will fill drink bottles and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we've always got that at
Yeah.
at the bar.
But yeah, so 2015 was a trial by fire.
Mhm.
It was full on that whole weekend.
Yep.
And we have, like we mentioned earlier, many, many supporters for that first event that made sure it was a success.
Yep. And we had Jordan and his partner who, they came along and helped set up. the
Oh,
night
yeah.
before,
Jordan was
Lana.
there, and Lana brought us some dinner, or
Yep.
brought me and Jordan dinner.
Yep.
In her pajamas at like 9 o'clock at night while we were lugging boards and stuff.
Mhm.
That was
the
a
next morning. We had a whole heap of people there who were there to help set
Yeah.
up as well. So, yeah, it really was the start of a real community feel that so
Yeah.
many people, like we were, well, I wasn't, but you were at the time driving
here,
this
there, and
kind of-
everywhere.
No, I actually mean driving the idea of this event, but it took a village.
Oh, it did, yeah. I mean, we probably had something in the range of a dozen people over that night and the next morning who showed up early to kind of went, what do you need us to do? How can we help you? And Jordan and I had put out all the tables, put out all the boards. We rolled out a bunch of the mats. We had tubs of terrain sort of spread around the room, but at that stage, like Dan Newton was still painting terrain in his
Yeah.
Realm of Battles
And
to come
Alison
down.
as well.
And Alison, absolutely. So we still had people who were doing stuff for us
Yeah.
at their own time in their own homes
Yeah.
to bring along the next day. And then we had people turning up going, what can we do? How can we help you?
Yeah.
And the same with the pack up. We had a bunch of people hang around to help pack up. So that...
And I know that doesn't happen at some other events. I know that we're really fortunate and we've got this this great team of people who do make sure that they turn up early and that they stick around at the end to
Yeah,
get
and
everything
it's not for
packed
every
up.
event because people have lives and the real world. But at the same time, like the boys from the Toy Soldier Cartel will almost invariably offer their terrain in case we need some extras up our sleeve, and will quite often turn up early, help us set up, and then go for breakfast afterwards. The Snake Eye Squad, Steve and the team will have started doing that as well.
There's lots of
The Mafia are the same. Like we've
got lots of people who chip in,
Yeah.
and many hands make light work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Masters at this event is now in South Perth
Yes,
at the South Perth Community Hall on Sandgate Street.
which is awesome because we're still borrowing the outpost
the
terrain,
majority, I
and
think.
it meant we didn't have to go the
We
day
didn't have to
before,
carry it,
pick it
yeah.
up, take it, and then have to take it back again.
I think we probably had somewhere between 12 and 15 sets ourselves at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
But being at the venue where Outpost is held and their terrain is stored, like Emma just said, it made it much easier for us
So much
logistically.
easier.
They also had all the trestle tables in place.
Yeah.
They'd also bought some fat mats through
Yeah.
that process as well. So we were actually able to have every table covered for year 2.
Well, so that was the thing. Remember, so after year 1, we'd had the complaint about the tables, and so we were trying to look at how could we get the tables covered in a way that was economically viable.
Yep.
So that's where the battlescape, the vinyl
the vinyl,
battlescapes,
yeah, the vinyl stickers came from.
And we ordered them, and if you remember, I had to go out to the airport
Oh my God,
like
yes.
the day before the second Masters.
And then they didn't want to give them to you because my name was on the pack,
That's
not
it.
yours.
And
yeah,
then so I had
remember.
to drive back to you so you could write me a note. Why I didn't just write a note and fake your signature, I don't know. But I drove back to you, had to get you to sign it to say that you gave me permission, then had to drive back, pick them up.
Go through all the customs rigmarole, yeah.
And then at, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning, I was still stickering those tables.
Yeah, that was a late night, that one.
Yes. That was when we used to be up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, then back up again at 5, packing the car.
Yeah,
We don't do that anymore.
not if we can help it.
We're a bit more onto it
Most of the time.
most of the time, except for show.
Uh,
We don't sleep for a month and a half.
yeah. So 2016 saw Tom White win
Mm-hmm.
with his Space Wolves / Grey Knights.
Mm-hmm.
That brief moment in 7th edition when Space Wolves and Grey Knights were winning tournaments again. Didn't last for long, but he did it.
Mm-hmm.
That was also the last event where we had community comp involved because we had a comp and no comp environment in 2015 and 2016.
Yes.
And the first year we did it for 2015, we had an open category and a sub, I want to say 12 comp point as well.
Yeah.
And then they were two different winners.
Yeah.
For the first year, but the second year,
Tom won both.
Did
he get best overall and best general as well?
Yeah, he won like three
everything.
categories or something. It was amazing.
Needed a wheelbarrow to walk out with all of his.
Well, that's it,
stuff.
because this is one of the events where we've always strived to make sure there are prizes as well. Yeah, he walked away with quite a pile of bits and pieces.
Yeah.
The price did go up to $70 that year because the venue is more at the time, and it still is very expensive.
It wasn't as expensive then as it is now.
No, that's very much the case. But when we worked it out, because by that stage we were also factoring in the costs of things like insurance and the liquor licenses that we have to have, and we'd been audited a couple of times around the liquor side of things. And
we had liquor licenses for every event.
Yeah, we have, but at the same time,
we did have insurance for every event as well. We just didn't necessarily think to include that into the cost of tickets.
not into working out what it actually was costing us for events. But of course, doing it for a year, we'd actually worked all that stuff out and gone, okay, we know roughly per head how much it's costing us per day. So that was factored in. 2017, 12 months later, we'd had show by this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we'd even recovered because we'd done show, then we'd flown to America.
Oh, yes.
And then
straight back home.
Straight back to do Masters.
Yeah. That was stupid, wasn't it?
It was in retrospect. So we did that. And same venue, South Perth again.
Mm-hmm. By this point, we'd got a whole heap of terrain.
Well, we also had a bunch of table numbers that were MDF cut from show.
Yeah, so we did have table numbers the second year.
Yes, we did.
Which, and so right from our first blood event, I'd got,
You know what I should
have... The
have...
table numbers were just the cafe numbers with a little OBSEC logo and a number on them. But
what I should have done before this as well, which I can't do while we're live recording, but I should have mentioned how many pages the players' packs were.
Yeah.
Because the first Masters was probably 8 pages.
Yeah.
The second year was probably 9 or 10. By the time we hit the third year, we were probably talking 11 or 12. Because by the time we hit 2017, I think we're in 8th edition. Did
8th drop
I don't
just
remember.
before the first show? So I think it was.
I want to say it was 8th edition.
Yeah.
Because it was all indexes and...
Yeah.
Yes, it was, because Chapter Approved 2017 came out after Masters. So it was 8th edition. So the players pack had to be revamped to accommodate all the new phrasing and terminology, and the missions had changed, and we had to do a little bit of a revamp and update for the players pack that year. We had Owen Davis win it that year with Orcs.
Was like 900?
240-something Orc boys.
And they were amazing paint jobs.
They were Goth Orcs, and they even had the white and black checks on their shoulders and on their jump packs.
Was it a pirate ship he had?
He did, yeah, it was a battle wagon that he converted to be a looted pirate ship, which looked amazing. And the funny thing is with that army, people were worried because that year we only had 2.5 hours around, and he was finishing games because he knew exactly how to play that army. He'd practiced with that army, and Tom White was the only person who came close to beating him because there's a lot of Orcs on the table. So that was 2017. By this stage...
And it was definitely 8th edition. I was right. It did drop
just
June.
around, just before show.
Yeah. So, because I was thinking, didn't we have our first 8th edition event
just before
July
show?
Yeah,
we slotted one in before show. Yeah. Then by that stage, we're actually kicking along pretty well at this point. We're running down under pairings.
No, we weren't.
2017?
We did Best Coast pairings for 2017.
You're right, we did. It was BCP for 2017.
Which was still awesome. So we'd gone from everything being paper-based, and so I would go around to all of the tables at the beginning of the round.
Hand out the scorecard.
I would hand out... So at the beginning of the day, I'd hand out a scorecard, and I would say... So beginning of day one, I would say to people... These are your sports scorecards. Can you please make sure that as you go through the event, write down your opponent's name, because if you don't, we're going to come to the end of tomorrow. You're going to forget who you played in round 2. It's really difficult for me to go through and find that for you. So if you're writing this down during every game, then that's going to make tomorrow heaps easier for you. Awesome. Yep. Thanks, Emma. And then I would hand out the scorecard, and I would go through everything, talk to them about a whole heap of things. And then at the end of the round, they come up and go, I don't have a scorecard. And I would say, do you remember when I came out and I said all of this whole spiel? No, you didn't come to our table. Yes, because remember when I said it, you said this back to me.
Well, at one point there, you even got to the point of writing the player's name at the top of it, because people were handing them in with no names on and all sorts of stuff.
That's it.
We got to the point where
I had to write. So I was writing the table number on it, the round number, and the players' names on it.
Yeah. It got pretty bad at one point there due to the lowest common denominator for some players.
Yeah.
Then, so 20...
So that was my point. We'd gone from this, at the end of the round, we had to wait for players to actually bring in those scorecards, which meant we couldn't do anything towards working out what was happening with the next round until we were
hamstrung by the players
back in.
Yeah.
We would then have to go through and check all the entries to make sure that we'd put things in the right place. We'd have to make sure that players knew that 8 and 14 doesn't add up to 20.
Yep.
That
was common.
Okay, you've told me that out of 20, you got 44 points. Do you see that there's a problem here? No, because I did get 44 points. Yeah, okay. So we had to go through all of that. There was a lot of manual stuff, and we went from that to BCP, which didn't do everything that we wanted it to do.
It did the generalship side of things.
But it did heaps.
Yeah, it did the generalship side. We were still doing manual painting and manual sports.
Yeah.
And then Down Under Pairings was offered to us.
Yeah, which we totally didn't want to go into.
No, it was actually fairly reluctant because it was an unknown, and
we'd been working with BCP, and it was working. And
the tipping point, interestingly,
players don't like to change.
Early 2018 was actually the tipping point because we were doing First Blood 2018, and the export data function stopped working.
Yeah. Which meant we had to manually do everything.
Yeah, so we then had to manually...
Well, no, I had a panic attack and you manually did it all.
Yes, so I had to sit down with an Excel spreadsheet open and the app open and individually write it all out and transfer all the scores to the Excel sheet by hand.
I didn't actually have a panic attack. I did stand in the front of the table and make sure nobody disturbed you.
That was about 90. That was about 90 players that year as well. That was our biggest First Blood.
Yeah.
And that was after the event, I raised a notice to BCP and went, what the hell? Why is this not working? And they went, we disabled that because no one was using it. And I went, are you kidding me? He said, yeah, we don't use it, so we just killed it. Why is it still in the app? Why is it still an option? Oh, we just haven't got around to taking it out yet. That was really frustrating.
Yeah.
So the only other event that we had Line Breaker and we had WATC that year. And both of those were done manually. WATC was fine in that, even though we had...
in that I was doing it and you were playing.
Let me explain. We had 20 teams. Yeah. So essentially you were dealing with a 20-player event.
Yes and no.
But there was no soft scores either, which is the other component that made it a bit easier. And Line Breaker, we have a much more fluid weekend and it was a bit cooler in terms of chilled factor.
Out. Relaxed.
Yeah.
It was stinking hot.
So after WATC, that's when we started talking to Diffie about Down Under Pairings, and then we tried it after that, and then we made him work his ass off for show, because we dumped like 14 different events into it.
Yep.
And
we didn't make him.
He offered.
Yeah.
Well, he said he'd do whatever we needed it to do, he would make it do.
Yeah.
And I don't think he quite understood the length of what that was we were going to ask. But he did it.
Yep.
And we've been with Down Under Pairings since that point. So 2018 was all Down Under Pairings.
Yep.
We were still kind of learning some of the things we could make it do.
So was Diffie.
Yeah. Does it do this, Diff? Yeah, it will do in about an hour.
Yeah.
So we've kind of pushed that software here, there, and everywhere with WATC, and obviously we've hosted ATC at Show in 2018 as well.
Doubles as well.
And so we've made it do all sorts of things, and Diffie's always tried to make sure it does what it needs to for our events, which is really amazing. because basically all of our formats are somewhere else being used as well. I mean, I'd like to think some of the events are original, but ultimately they're not. Like, there's doubles events happen all around the world.
Yeah,
There's team
of
events that
course.
happen all around the world.
Yeah.
So,
Why reinvent the wheel?
yeah. So we 2018 was won by Pete Platel with his Imperial Knights and Astra Militarum. And I think that was his hobby score was amazing that year. The army was absolutely stunning.
Now, with that, way back when we first started, Masters was obviously our only event at the time, but it did have a really strong hobby focus. By 2018, that had decreased significantly. In 2019, it's probably at its lowest that it's ever been, I think.
Yeah, look, I mean, the part of it's to do with the change in the wider community around the perception of the event, which we're going to cover in just a second.
Yeah.
In that, what players expect from a tournament is now, it's no longer clear that the community has a single-minded view of what a tournament should be. And even the word tournament's not the right word.
No, we try to use event more often.
So the fifth one sees us take on a new venue in 2019.
Yes.
Down in Kelmscott. It's a bigger venue than South Perth.
Now, I should know this.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we host last year? Was it South Perth or was it at Manning Hall?
No, it was South Perth. We had no choice last year. We'd originally planned, if you remember, we booked Kelmscott because we'd gone down to Kelmscott for doubles.
Yes, and then they demolished
They demolished the building on us, so we went back to South Perth. So that's the reason we're in Kelmscott this year, because they'd finished the reno.
Yeah.
And it's much nicer. So this year, it's 120 battle points, 50 painting points, and 30 sportsmanship points. So it's still, it's not quite 60-40. It's probably 65-35 or something when you actually do the maths. Yeah, something like that. So it's still got a decent hobby component.
No, actually, I think that's 60-40. It is 60-40.
Yeah, it is. You're right. So it's still 60-40.
Yeah.
Next year we'll shift slightly.
Which is good. I still really like it. I like the fact that it does still have that 40%.
Well, we're still using the painting scorecard for this event now that Luke and I wrote for Ultimates the first year back in 06, 07, 08, whatever it was back in the day. It's the same painting scorecard now. I want to change that for 2020 to give us a bit more ability to nitpick and...
Well, also, there's still ambiguity in it. And one of the things that we're really that we've always tried to do is be transparent and reduce any ambiguity or any, I guess, any space for...
interpretation and argument.
Yeah. And, you know, if you look, is the painting scorecard in there?
Yeah. It's so by this stage, this year, we're at 19 pages for this players pack.
Yeah. Now, I will say that this is 19 pages. There are still events that run where the players pack is a paragraph on a Facebook event.
Yeah.
So we are so over the top, it's just not funny.
Yeah. According to some players, we actually are.
Yeah. Having said that, we just had a question go up about the players pack. That's the sentence has been in the players pack for the last 4 years.
No, 2017 it got added, and it's
so
still
it's the third year.
That's been in there, and no one spotted it yet.
And this is the first time that anyone noticed it. We did actually I think it was a Masters players pack where people
we had a
to
hidden
come
prize.
Up and, say a phrase to us, and
it was like a third. It wasn't even a third of the room. It was like 13 people out of 65 or something.
Yeah.
That actually followed the full instructions.
Yeah, so we'd have random people coming up to us and going, so I need to tell you that TOs are amazing. Yes, you do. Here's a raffle ticket.
That was funny that year. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I guess it's important to read the players pack, and we keep telling people it's important to read the players pack. But
well, like I said to someone when we were at Varsity just gone, so the last page of the players pack is the painting scorecard.
Yeah. And so what I was just going to say about the painting scorecard is, you know, it says like for like bare minimum, well, and what's the tabletop? What's the difference between bare minimum and tabletop? So, you know, I think we need to just be a bit more.
We're even talking about adding photos to it to try and give some examples.
Yeah.
So, 19 is the painting guide. 18 is a map of where the venue actually is located.
Yes.
There is an address in the in there as well, but I actually grabbed a screenshot from Google Maps showing with a big red marker where the venue is.
Yes, because the event that we ran a month ago, we had people who went to the wrong venue.
Yep. Then 17, 16, 15, 14, 13 and 12 are the 6 missions.
Yeah, most people start from the beginning and go.
Well, no, because I'm at the back. I'm at the last page now.
Right.
Anyway, so 12 through 17. The reason that they are a page per mission is because I did have them abridged, where they all fitted on one page, and then players were complaining, saying that
even though they were all in down under
even though they were on down under pairings, they wanted
we're
them.
Talking about best coast pairings and. Keep getting my head mixed up.
They wanted more than just the page references. They wanted the actual scoring processes in there, which obviously means that when you start adding in Maelstrom plus Eternal plus kill points, you have to put much more information on a page. So there's 6 pages for the missions. Mm-hmm. The page before that is essentially the explanation of that combination and what the, Slay the Warlord, First Strike and Line Breaker and those bits and pieces, as well as the scoring caps and the points differential for kill points as well.
Yep.
The page before that are general mission clarifications about how you place objectives and refined strategies and random game length and all those other sort of bits and pieces that you need to know. And then you actually hit page 9, which is the tail. It talks about the awards and that sort of stuff, and then it moves back through the rest of it. So the pack itself probably hasn't grown by more than a page or 2 in theory based on the first year. It's just that we've gotten way more extensive in the explanation because that first year, I'm sure that the missions were a single page that went primary, secondary, tertiary, primary, secondary, tertiary, primary, secondary, tertiary, not primary is X. This is the page reference on this book, and then a copy paste out of that book explaining exactly how you score points, and then having to extrapolate it all. So.
Do you think our player base has changed over the 5 years?
I think the game has changed, which has meant we have to be more, more clear and defined.
Explicit, yeah.
And that in turn has changed the player base's expectations because we've also changed their expectations in this process. Because we explain so much and we give so much information around, army selection is a full page that talks about these are the publications you can use. This is what you must bring. This is the painting standards. This is WYSIWYG. This is this. This is that. So and it's funny because I remember reading a player's pack from one of the clubs here in Perth, and they'd asked me beforehand, but it was funny. I was reading it going, I wrote this. And then I remember that asked me if they can borrow bits of the player's pack, and I thought they would just kind of, not copy paste it, but use the same sort of phrasing, and then it was copy pasted, which is fine.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, why reinvent the wheel?
No, not to mention the fact that it's not like these are, like we publish these publicly. You can go and get them and do it. There's nothing I can do to stop you. No. I'd rather work with those TOs and go, hey, did you have any complaints?
Yeah, this is what we've noticed. Have you noticed anything? Has anyone said if there were any holes that you came up with? Because if there were, then we can add those.
Yeah, exactly. We try and fix them.
Information to ours. Yeah.
So, we're at 19 pages. It was funny at Varsity on last week, or this week, sorry. Someone had printed out a copy, and they'd left it on one of the table. I have no idea who it belonged to, but I picked it up and thought, well, I'll keep it. And then I was talking to Gillian Platel, who offered to be one of our painting judges for 2019. And I said to her, look, you might as well keep this because it's got the painting scorecard at the back. And she went, oh, cool. And then she's picked it up and gone, is this the whole player's pack? I'm going, yeah, it's 19 pages. She's gone, wow, this is huge. And I've gone, yeah, it is. And then she's looked at me and gone, this is really nice paper as well. They've printed this on a really expensive paper stock. So it made it thicker than it should have been. Yeah. But we both kind of went, wow, this is getting a bit hefty. So
and it is. And, then we're like, okay, well, do we pull it apart and go terms of reference goes in one document? And, but the
missions as a separate document entirely and so on.
And so do we have something that's standard for all events? and then the missions change, and the venue changes.
But then you run the risk of people not downloading the right things and all sorts.
And we can't get people to read it if it's one document. If it's 5, it's really easy to miss something. So
yeah, which is why this is all in one, because WATC prior to this had a separate mission pack, which just got fiddly.
Yeah.
So we're still learning. 5 years on, we're still making changes and learning. And next year's players packs, I've already done the reformat, which I've been trying to avoid because
it was a mess, but it needed to be done. So
yeah,
badly.
I've done that now. So from a formatting point of view, for us to update it, it becomes much easier.
Yeah.
Because the last version used text boxes on text boxes within text boxes.
Yeah.
This is now a more classic Word document. Yeah, I liked the layout of the old version, but I think this is easier to read and easier to use for us.
Certainly easier to edit.
Yeah. So
and that's important because you don't want to be editing it and find that you've lost stuff
or
underneath the text
miss
box
stuff or yeah. So the last part of this conversation, that's the history of Masters. That's where we've been. And by the time that we record our next episode, we'll be able to tell you who wins.
Maybe we should have done this episode then.
No.
Oh, too late now.
No, we're going to have a... So what have we got? We've got live tonight.
Yep.
We've got podcast the Wednesday before Masters.
Yep.
Then
live
we've
after.
got live after. So we're going to be able to announce winners and stuff immediately after.
We'll do it on the day anyway.
Yeah, we do.
Try and do
But we can do a
Facebook
wrap-up
Live.
of Army lists and stuff and talk about the 2019 winner in the next episode. And then we move into 2020, which is the 5-year anniversary for things like WATC, for First Blood, for a number of different events is our 5-year anniversary for those events. We have our 4th show in 2020 as well.
Oh my goodness.
So another big year for us.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about very quickly now before we wrap the episode up is we've been talking about this on and off and with our patrons a little bit as well, talking about moving forward for 2020, trying to classify what an event actually is for us because
I think
we don't want players being disappointed with an event.
No, and I think we spent a lot of time, I certainly spent a lot of time trying to explain what an event wasn't. I put a lot of effort into trying to build a community and to try and bring people together and to try and dispel some of the myths about all tournament players are hardcore, and because it's not what I saw at all and it wasn't what I wanted for us to create.
Yeah.
So, so I think once we've talked a lot about what it isn't, I think it's really important moving forward to really focus on what it is.
Yeah, and I think that before the end of the year, we'll have a podcast covering it once we've sort of wrapped the definitions up.
It's really difficult.
Yeah.
It is really difficult to define.
So going forward for 2020, we're looking at 3 broad categories.
Mm-hmm.
They will be narrative, hobby, and competitive.
Yes.
Now, the expectations for those events will be based on what the community feedback has been, and those definitions will probably change as the events roll through so that we can get a better understanding of where our community sits. But broadly speaking, we're talking about, when you talk about a competitive event, we're going to be talking about things like WATC.
WATC
and Masters
will be our 2 competitive events, and then there'll be competitive events within show as well.
Yep. And they are the ones where you are most likely to find things like chess clocks, not necessarily required, but you are most likely to find them being used.
Chess clocks is still up for debate.
It's still a conversation that's going on. If you're one of our patrons, you'll have already heard part of that conversation on that podcast.
Mm-hmm. I'm still very much against them.
And I've changed sides, and I'm now Voldemort arguing with you. So,
which is really frustrating because I really like it when we're on the same page.
The hobby events is kind of the format we've already doing for things like First Blood, where there's a big hobby component, and it's more about introducing players to the game and having fun and doing cool things with your hobby in general.
Yeah.
And then narrative events will be things like Armidale for 2020, then the Apocalypse event. It'll be things like doubles, where we're going to start integrating a narrative focus on how you build your army and how the games play out and what missions you might be playing as well. So we're going to be looking at some of the Crucible of War missions and some of the more outside of the box missions.
Yep.
So we can kind of give you different experiences at every event. And the goal is to kind of spread them, 2 or 3 of each across the whole year. Obviously, show will have
some of each.
Potentially some of each, yeah. So we're going to give you guys as many different varieties as possible, and then we can take that on board as we plan 2021 as to, okay, well, people didn't want that. people wanted more of this.
And we have to be really aware that we need to broaden how we're actually promoting these events.
And that's part of the reason why
Yeah.
Emma and I have had this conversation around classifying the event, because people see... First Blood's a great example. We've had this happen before, where people have brought armies to First Blood and then been disappointed because...
I thought it was just a fun game where I could come and hang out with some friends, and it turns out other people have brought competitive
have taken
armies.
it seriously, yeah. So part of that conversation has to be around how we define that for a player base, make sure that's public and clear, and then also give clear boundaries as to what we expect when you bring an army to that event. Because, we've seen it a couple of times now where players have brought along an army which is complete within the rules of the format and haven't necessarily met the intent of the format. So,
but that's what I mean by it's really difficult to try and define that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're trying to work on this to explain it as best we can. And then, like I say, that definition will have to update and change as we go. And it'll also have a bearing on the terrain that we use for those events, where for the narrative and the hobby events, you'll see weird and wonderful terrain and boards and...
Maybe bare naked boards.
Whereas the competitive ones... we'll be looking to acquire some extra terrain to not standardize every table, because I don't want to go down that far, but I do want to kind of create them a bit more evenly, so that while it might not be laid out the same way, and there might be more of on some tables and less on others, there's at least some level of consistency so that you know roughly what to expect. Like, we might have 5 different types of boards for the event. And
I don't think we're going to get that done by the end of 2020.
No, but that's...
Just so you know.
But that's where my thought process is.
That's a really long-term goal.
Well, there's a lot of money to be invested as well.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, there's obviously building and painting it all and storing it all. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to go into doing that.
You hate doing that, and I'm really busy.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying it's a perfect plan. I'm saying it's a plan.
Yeah, I do have a plan where we do a terrain building and painting night and invite people around for beer and pizza.
Yeah, that might be a thing.
I think that would be a great thing. Because, as I reminded myself at the beginning of this, if you ask for help, people are often more than willing to give it. And we have been forgetting to ask for help.
We have been, yeah. Anyway, so that's the history of Masters.
So, what...
And where we're moving forward to.
Yeah. So, looking at it, what are some of the key learnings that we've taken out of it since we've been doing this for now 5 years?
Always listen to Emma.
Oh, that's a perfect one. And we were talking about getting a new tattoo. I think you should...
don't ever ask Emma a rules question.
Oh, no, that's fine. You can ask
I
me.
still remember Mitch jokingly turning around to you. It must have been at First Blood, the very first Blood, and going, "Hey, Emma, what's the ballistic skill on a Guardian?" And you went, 7, and walked off.
Yep.
And he looked at me and went, "Have I missed an FAQ or something?" And I went, "No, she's messing with you, dude. It's not 7. He's gone, "That's good." She said it with so much conviction, I thought she was being serious.
Why would he ask me?
I don't know, but he did.
Either.
It's funny, though, because over the years, despite not being an active player of 40k, you've actually picked up a fair bit via osmosis, and you can be handed rule books for rules queries to go through the process logically and actually answer questions.
Yeah.
And I've never had to overrule you. So... And even after the event, when we'd go through and start having those conversations around, hey, this weird thing happened, I've never been in a situation where I've gone, no, you did that wrong. So don't be afraid if you see Emma at an event to ask a question, because if she doesn't know, she will come and ask me. And
the thing is that, so in my life...
And I'm not infallible either, I should add.
No, that you're not. In my life outside...
Thanks.
Calling it like it is. In my life outside of OBSEC, I run an organisation, and one of the things that I speak about often with my staff is that I actually would prefer to employ staff who were prepared to say, you know what, I don't know that, I'll go and find out for you, than people who need to know everything. And so I try and live by that as well. I don't know everything. I would love to be able to say, you know, I can answer any of your questions with complete conviction and know that I'm right. But if I don't know something, I have no issue in saying, you know what, actually, that's beyond my skill set. I can tell you where the toilets are. I can tell you that beer is $6, but if you want to know what the ballistic skill on that particular model is, get your rule book out, let's have a look. And if we don't know, let's call Michael over and we'll, you know. So, you know, I'm more than happy to kind of go, that's beyond my skill set. Let's try and find out.
It was funny with playing Lachlan, our son, for his first big, like we played a 1,000-point game last night. And I said I was
Which, by the way, I've still been offering to play the Grey Knights game that you have said you'll write me a flowchart.
No, it's Imperial Knights. It's not Grey Knights. Get it right.
I'm sure it was Grey
It's
Knights.
not. There's no way I would offer it to Grey Knights for you.
I'm sure you
Grey
said
Knights
Grey
are complicated. It's Imperial Knights.
Okay, right.
Anyway.
But it still hasn't happened, so just saying.
I went through, bookmarked all the pages for on his iPad where all his army was, and then was making him look it up whenever he had to do something. So he got used.
Are you sure it wasn't Grey Knights?
It's definitely not Grey Knights.
What does Tristan play?
He plays Grey Knights.
Yeah, it's Grey Knights.
It's not Grey Knights. I said I could do up a flowchart for Imperial Knights because they are easy. Anyway, they're not so good anymore. Anyway.
I don't have the energy to go back and try and find
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to go back and argue with me, go for it. And I was making Lachlan look up each and everything. And to try and get him used to the idea of, I need to know what the answer to this is, therefore I look it up in the book. And after he'd done it a few times and it was getting kind of late, I started just telling him what the numbers were. And we got to, it was probably turn 3 or turn 4, and he was firing the bolt pistol on the back of the Gravis Armoured Captain's gauntlet. And I looked at him and went, I actually don't know what that stat is. I have no idea how many shots it has or what range it is or what profile it is. And he went, you've known everything else. I've gone, yeah, there's a gap in my knowledge there that I've never faced one on the table. I've never used one myself. So I have no idea. Now you actually do need to look it up because I can't tell you what the answer to that question is. So there are still gaps in my knowledge, but that thankfully is an easy one. It was pistol 3, 12 inches, strength 4, no AP. So
now you know it.
And now I won't forget it because I remember this.
You didn't know something and you had to find it out from your 13-year-old.
But, that's the sort of thing I want to instill in him if he does want to start playing at events so that he knows he can look stuff up and he doesn't have to have it all in his head.
And so that he knows that he doesn't have to take his opponent's word for something.
Exactly.
And particularly for younger players who are playing against older players or who are playing against people who perhaps are like me and can say something with complete conviction and have absolutely no idea what the answer actually is.
Or even just a well-known person in the community who's experienced. There's
just because you're experienced doesn't mean
you're right.
Infallible.
Yeah. So it's really important that I think he understands, and it's still something we're trying to get the community to do at large, is that if you're not sure, ask your opponent politely and courteously. And if you still don't agree, ask the TO.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong, and this goes for any event you attend. I would hope that those TOs in question would agree with me in that if you're not sure, get someone. The whole point of an organizer and a judge is to answer those queries.
The judge, yeah.
So don't go away after the event, stew for 3 days, and then whinge at your local Warhammer store, because that doesn't do anything. No. 3 days after the fact, I can't fix it.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do at that point. Whereas if you're not comfortable with something that's happening, if you think the person's doing something wrong, deliberately or otherwise, if you think it's not right, stop and ask. And if they can show you the rule, then you can move on. If they can't, or you disagree with what they're reading, then you can ask us. And there'll be no hard feelings. There'll be no negativity applied. It'll just be a case of, let's find out the answer. And I think as long as you approach that with courtesy and respect, don't go, oh, you're a liar, I can prove it, and, throw out an aggressive tone, then you're fine.
I'm just laughing because you have been known to go, you're wrong.
I have.
I know you're wrong. Why would you think that's right?
Look, I'm not saying I'm infallible. I've said that more than once.
I know, but I just like pointing out when, yeah. Okay.
A lot of the time I'm right, so that's why I can, my hit rate's 70-30,
yeah,
80-20.
Still be kind of polite when you're doing it.
Depends on who I'm talking to.
So key learnings. What are your key learnings? Negatives. Where have we grown or found areas where we didn't do so well and we've improved?
Scoring and managing scoring has been a big improvement over the years. Table numbers have also helped us manage the player base.
Yeah, because somebody forgot table numbers at our last event, didn't you?
Yeah, shut up. I think the
lists work well, don't they?
Huh?
Lists work well, don't they?
Sometimes. I'm not gonna say yes or no to that one. Yeah, it's definitely been ups and downs, and Masters has always ended up in the 60s in terms of attendance. We've kind of hovered in the mid 60s for every event.
Yeah.
2 days and 2,000 points and 6 games is a big ask for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives us almost always gives us a defined winner, which is part of the reason we do it. Part of the other reason is we want to get value for money and,
and offer something that isn't offered at other times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the event itself is about to have its 5th anniversary.
Yes, I'm really trying to do some growth work here. So what do you think we've done well?
Look, I like to think we got a lot of things done well and right over the years. You know, we must have run 50 or 60 events at this point. If you break show up into individual events each year as well, that
if you break that up into individual events, we're close to 100.
who knows? Like I'd have to go and figure it out. But we kind of have averaged out and done 8 to 10 a year outside of show for 4 years now, and then obviously the 5th year was Masters was a single event.
Yeah.
So I reckon we're somewhere between 60 and 80 events once you break it all up. Maybe close to 100, but
be close to 100. There's about 20 events over.
But also we didn't run all of
years.
those because we've had people help out because we have asked for help. And we still take learnings from every event. Like, none of them have been perfect, none of them have been infallible, and none of them have gone without some sort of hitch. The number of players often tips that. Like, you know, when you have an event that's 6 to 12 players, they are often a lot easier to handle. They can create their own issues, though, when you start having pairings that start doubling up, and depending on how many rounds you're playing. And the big events things like WATC is 100 players, and you and I had a not relaxed 2 days, but in terms of managing the player base and the scoring, it was actually not. It was a lot easier this year than prior years because it was all electronic. The matchups didn't work was the only thing I had to go and manually sort out every round because players couldn't add their own matchups because of the way WATC works. But, you know, I think the player base has stepped it up as well to make our lives that bit easier to manage the event, which is great.
Yeah.
It also helps that there's several players in the pool now who are running their own events. Guys like the Toy Soldier Cartel who have run a couple of events now. Mitch is running his own Age of Sigmar events and 40k events as well. We often get guys from Outpost and Crags who come and play on top of that. So all of these people who are running events that I get to go and play at are experienced enough to understand some of the challenges we have, and they want to help. And the flip side is that we try and help them. So they help manage parts of the community to make our lives that bit easier. So it's really become a good symbiotic process. Right, so let's flip this on its head, because I've been a player and active in the tournament scene for a number of years as a player, whereas you came in fresh when we started running events.
I did.
So
now I'm old and jaded, but at the time I was fresh.
No, you're still optimistic. You're not reacting. You're not reacting the way players normally do with a new release or anything like that.
This is true, but I'm not happy with the idea of change and introducing chess clocks. So it's rubbing off on me.
It is, slowly but surely.
Yep. Change is not good.
So what have you seen over the past 5 years of events that have been a really positive thing? Like, what have we learned and done better?
Can I start with my negative first? Things that we don't do well. I like to end on a positive.
Fair
I'm
enough.
still upbeat and positive.
This is what I'm saying. I'm right. All right. Well, let's start at what do we need to improve?
Okay, we suck at marketing.
Yeah, it's something that is ironic given my career and yours.
Yeah, that's it. And the thing is that we're both really passionate about what we do with OBSEC and the events that we run. And we're both actually outside of Objective Secured. We're both good at marketing for businesses that we work for. And yet when it comes to something that we've created and that we're passionate about and that we're hoping to create to bring people together and to try and, I guess, create something specifically to meet a need in the community, we're not good at telling people about it.
No.
Because it feels like we're being pushy and we're being salesy, and we don't want to be that kind of person. And that's, the whole, if you build it, they will come. Well, not if you don't bloom and tell them about it, they won't.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's something that we need to get better at, and we need to, I guess, flip it on its head and go that actually this isn't about us trying to be pushy. This isn't about us trying to be salesy. This is about us actually trying to let people know that something is happening that they might be interested in.
Yeah.
And, we created this to fill a need. Well, it's not going to fill a need if people don't come because they don't know about it.
Yeah.
So we're doing a disservice to other people by not telling them about it, rather than us trying to push something that we've created and developed.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of the American events in particular do really well.
Yeah. Yep, they do.
Anything else
That we do badly?
that we could improve on?
I think that we both take things personally still.
Yep.
And we don't have a very thick skin at times. And so when we put our heart and soul into things and then get negative feedback, we can have emotional responses to that, which can be difficult.
That just makes us human.
We are definitely human and tired and, that kind of thing. So, but I think it would be better if we were able to be more objective. We might be able to, see negative feedback more positively.
It depends on what that feedback is in my mind, but that's probably another topic.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
And know that you're never going to please everyone. And rather listening to the one person that's the naysayer, actually focus on the 200 people that had a great experience or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we are human.
Yeah, and I think, like any business, whether you know the people who run it or not, it's easy to get a disconnect as someone who is paying for something, and if your expectations aren't met.
Mm.
So the problem is that because we know most of the attendees on some level personally, that can make it hard.
Mm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying, though.
Mm.
Anything else? We're going 3 for 3, or are we going to move on?
That's all I've got.
It's not terrible, then.
It takes a lot of organisation. And I think that when we started this, and particularly for Southern Hemisphere Open, I know we're talking about Masters, but I don't think that we necessarily had any idea at all how much would go into organising events and
No.
what everything that goes on in the background, and we had these really lofty ideas for the kinds of things we wanted to create and where we wanted OBSEC to go and what we want Masters to look like and now show and the other events, and but we sort of underestimate how much work it will take, overestimate how much time we have in order to do it, and the capacity of just the two of us. And so we probably need to be more realistic with that kind of thing. But I think if we did have a better understanding, none of this would have ever happened. So it's probably good we went into it quite naive.
Yeah, probably. Well, I suppose it's that's an interesting point. I've done store openings, I've done fashion shows, and all sorts of event planning in my career.
Mm.
But you don't quite realise how much of that stuff you delegate out.
Outsource or throw money out.
When you're in that role,
Yeah.
when you've got someone else footing the bills and you need to make something happen, you go, cool, I need a runway and I need dressing rooms built and I need this and I need that. Here's all the quotes. Yes, you're happy with that? Awesome. And then it all happens.
Yeah.
And when it's coming out of your own bank account, and you're having to budget things and, you've only got so much money to spend on an event, then it's a very different, oh no, we can do that ourselves.
Yeah.
Type stuff. So it's, well, it'd be nice to have an investor sat behind us, giving us a bunch of money to do these things. At the moment, that's not a reality. So, yeah, I think you're right that we didn't. I'd done big events before and store openings and all sorts of stuff, but then I'm one person who sets it all up, and then there's dozens of people who make it happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, being the top and the bottom of that pyramid is
in the middle.
Yeah.
We are the pyramid.
Yeah, is an interesting experience.
Yeah.
All right. We now go back to my original question.
Okay. What was the original question? Ask it again.
What do we do well? What have we gotten better at?
I think that we've got a much better pattern for events in general. So we're we're not up still fixing terrain or that kind of thing at 3:00 in the morning and packing the trailer at 5 in order to be there. Everything's organised and systemised and that kind of thing, which I think if you're running events regularly, you need those systems, you need that organisation, you need to know these are the things, this is what happens, this is how it happens, this is the process, that kind of thing. I think that we have worked really hard and created an amazing community. So, again, I know we're talking about Masters, but at mixed doubles that we ran, was that a month ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I was really struck by how safe I feel in that environment. So, our kids came to that event, and our niece and nephew came as well. And they range from 3 to 14.
Yep.
And at no point did I ever, and I'm a helicopter parent, so my kids are always within arm's reach, even my 14-year-old. But at our events, I don't ever feel like that's an issue. At show, the big two that we have, I feel completely comfortable with them walking around because I know that there are however many people there that will make sure that nothing happens to our kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely fantastic that we do have this amazing community that we can feel really safe in. And I'm quite often the only woman walking into a room, and I've never once felt unsafe walking into that room. And, at the end of the last event, you had to go home, and there were however many guys who were like, oh, no, we'll stick around. You don't want to be here in this particular area at night by yourself. And, and I'm a big grown-up person, so I don't need babysitting. But it was really lovely that people do care so much.
Yeah. I think in the early days you might have been a bit more apprehensive of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, while I might have had relationships with a bunch of the people who were there, you didn't.
No, I didn't. And it was, as I've been reflecting on the last 5 years, that's been some of the things that I've been thinking about. So that first Masters where I went in and I must have known 5 people.
Mm.
And so I knew 5 people, and yet at the very first Masters, on day 2, somebody came up and told me that he'd attempted suicide in the weeks preceding Masters, and he was really pleased that hadn't happened because now he felt like he had somewhere where he fit. Like, I was a total stranger, and he felt that he could share that with me. That for me feels really huge.
Absolutely.
Somebody felt comfortable enough to be able to share that with someone that they don't know. And that's what I mean about, it's not just that I feel safe. I hope everybody feels safe, but I know the majority of people feel safe in that space and, safe to share those kinds of things as well.
I still remember it must have been mixed doubles last year, where we had like 20 police and armed forces
in the room.
The room, and there were some suspicious characters out in the car park, and there's about 8 cops looking out the door, all eagle-eyed, watching the cars in the car park, going, oh.
Yeah, definitely.
That's another interesting component of some of the events with the armed forces and the service personnel that we have.
Yeah. But I was going to say that, with that first Masters, I didn't know anybody in the room. And I always go around and try and...
Well, Pete, Mitch, Gillen...
Nick, to a certain extent.
Yeah, look, and...
There were a couple of others, but not very many. And now... then we had First Blood event, and again, I wasn't at the whole of that First Blood event because we have 3 children. And so I was only there for part of it, and going around to say goodbye to the people I knew was starting to take longer. Yeah. And then by the next event, I was like, I don't have time to leave because I don't have time to go around and say goodbye to everyone that I know. And then we hit a point where I knew everybody's name who was in the room. And now we're at a point where I'm struggling to hold on to everyone's name because there are 400 or 500 people that come to our events.
Yeah.
But those 400 or 500 people, I know people who are from the entire of Australia and some international as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's been a big shift. Yeah.
Well, the community certainly adopted you very quickly. You're not a tabletop gamer traditionally. Like, we play board games with the kids and we dabble in underworlds and that sort of thing. But you've never played 40K.
Nope.
And the fact the community is completely just going, yep, you're one of us now. Very rapidly, actually, when you actually think about it.
Yeah. 2 days. That was it. Wasn't even there the whole 2 days. But I did sell them alcohol.
I was about to say, you're literally bringing them booze. That probably ingratiates you pretty well.
Yeah, that's it.
I do think that the community that have formed around what we were trying to achieve
Yeah.
has been really amazing.
Yeah.
I think the level of support inside that community has been really amazing.
And the fact that, we've just finished recording the Facebook Live, which when you're listening to this will be last week. And we've got people on there who are asking what time do we need to get there to help set up for Masters. We are really fortunate, but we have worked really hard to try and create that community where people are there to help, and where that doesn't happen in a lot of places around the world.
No.
Because I've paid for an event, and so I'm going to turn up for the event. It's not my job to set up. And I know that if we actually, if we had to pay for people to come and help set up, then we would have to be charging a much higher ticket price and all of that kind of thing. But I've also never felt that with the players that come along. They're happy to see this happening and to support it, because if we're not doing it, then other people aren't either, and it's not going to happen. They'll miss out.
Yeah, I think I would hope that they understand that we don't take them for granted.
No way.
I think that...
Appreciate it each and every single time.
Yeah, I mean, we have some of the guys who hang around at the end of the day and they're not there for the start because they don't do mornings, and we have the reverse of that where they have to get home early because they've got family and kids and commitments after the event. And, it's not the same people every time for either end of that process. But at the same time, when they do help out, we genuinely appreciate it. And it's, I said to someone on Varsity on Monday night, they were helping put tables and stuff in. It's not a problem. And normally I would, myself or Richard would try and grab the boards and terrain and make sure they're not doing it. He said, no, it's the least we can do. You have to empty the trailer when you get home. So I think because we've been quite open as to how the events function and some of the costs involved and the time involved more than anything else, there's a level of player that they're probably never going to run an event, but they at least understand the logistics around how much work goes into it. I've said many times that for a one-day event, there's 6 days of, there's 8 hours a day for 6 days prior to the event in total that you need, and that's for just a tournament, let alone show. Show's months of work.
Yes.
But
yes, it is.
so to put that in perspective for Masters has 12 8-hour days worth of work in the lead up to it. And that's simple stuff like chasing after the venue, doing the site inspections, applying for the liquor licenses, making sure the insurance is all in order, ordering the trophies, ordering the prizes.
Checking the terrain,
all
through repairing. And
all that other sort of stuff that goes into it that is spread. It might be spread out over 3 months, but ultimately it's 100 plus hours of work.
So we don't just rock up on the morning and go, all right, who wants to come play a game today?
Yeah. And that's not taking into account chasing people's army lists up and making sure down under pairings is loaded. That's a couple of hours work just to make sure down under pairings is right. Writing the players pack, publishing the players pack, dealing with erratas and updating the players pack as issues are, any of the playtesting that goes into it, which I know that people don't think that's work, but it actually is.
Yeah. Because you have to be thinking about it all the time.
Yeah. So you're not necessarily enjoying the game for the sake of playing the game. You're actually there trying to figure out whether you've missed something.
Yeah. Where are the holes in what I've written?
Yeah.
So that we can try and fill them. Yeah.
So I think the fact that there was a period in time as a TO that you wouldn't take players behind the curtain, as it were. Yeah.
And I suppose that's one of the things that I have found coming into it is that because I haven't been part of this prior to Masters 2015, is that you will say to me, oh, that's not how it's done, Emma. Well, why not? Just because it hasn't been done that way before doesn't mean it shouldn't be done that way.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on transparency.
Yeah, which is why when someone, particularly for new tournament attendees, like they see us judging their army scores or something like that, or they get through the first couple of games and they're looking at the leaderboard and they're going, oh, can you explain X, Y, and Z? You will see them occasionally sat at the laptop with me or with you going, this is how it all works. This is how we get the outcomes that we get, and this is why we get what we get. Yeah. So that they can feel comfortable in the knowledge that what's going on makes sense, that they understand it, they know how it's tracked, they know how it's recorded, and we're happy to share all that. And in the past, that didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think that sharing goes beyond just information as well. Like, we're happy to help people if they want to run events. Then we're, as you said before, we're more than happy for people to use our players pack as a template, or we're happy to talk to them about where we've had issues in the past or where we've learnt from things, or we're not possessive about this. Like, there's space in the community for everyone.
Yeah.
So
look, it's even got to the point where we've started reciprocating the kindness from Outpost 6030 all those years ago when we first started, where they've gone, hey, we need some extra 40k terrain, can you help us out?
Yep.
And we've so the skulls at the start of 2019,
yeah.
I think I brought 5 tables worth of terrain for them because they were a handful short.
Yeah, and I know you offered for the one for the weekend just gone as well, 2 weekends ago when you listened to
it just happened that
they didn't need it. Yeah, but the offer's been there. So
and the same's with Crags in
if they
terms
ever
of
need it, then
yeah.
So
I think that's a testament to the community that there is such. I mean, we loan stuff out to Mitch for his events for 40k and boards for AOS and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then when Dan ran his bolt action doubles at our doubles event in October, we supplied all the boards. They supplied their own terrain because they had specific terrain they wanted to use.
Theirs is much better than ours.
For bolt action, yeah.
Bolt action, yeah.
But it meant that they didn't have to worry about carting boards and stuff. They just brought the mats and the terrain, which is a much easier process for them when they knew we were bringing boards anyway.
Yeah.
Same with the War Machine guys. So, I think it worked out. Well, it has been working really well.
And one of the things that the goals that we set out to achieve was to try and break down some of those silos and break down some of the stereotypes and preconceived ideas about different gaming systems. And I guess by doing it seems to be working.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of proud of that.
You should be. You put an awful lot of work in.
Not in the last couple of months. I haven't been slacking off.
Everyone needs a break sometime.
Time to get my nose back to the grindstone and, start getting some more blog posts done and some more newsletters and videos and all those kinds of things.
Unfortunately, there still is only 2 of us.
There is. Yeah.
And then the next question is, the only way we expand is by adding people, and I don't know how to add people yet. I don't know what that looks like, and that means giving up control for different things, and I don't know that you're ready for that, and I don't know I'm ready for that either. So we've got guys like Bodie who helped and has stepped up and did so much at show this year, and Micah as well for the RPG component of stuff. And I think there's a handful of people who, Richard's been there since the early days building terrain, and he helps at Varsity and all the rest of it. So there are people who are, I don't know, inner circle's the right word for it, but who are closer to the centre of it, who try and take some of the load from it, which we genuinely appreciate.
Yeah.
It's, we joke during the lead up to show that we take turns having meltdowns. It's it's half joking. Yeah. It's
really not.
It's funny though, because I'm fairly confident
it's not funny.
Well, I was about to say the first Masters, and certainly the first few events we ran in 2016 were probably similarly psychologically loaded, because we hadn't done some of this stuff before, and it was all new and scary, and how many people are going to come, and we're paying all this money, and are we going to have enough people to turn up? And
that is one of the hardest things, because players don't buy their tickets to the last minute.
That is.
Are people going to turn up?
The funny thing for us is that all the bills have to be paid long before the week or so before you turn up. So
we're there going.
We're the ones wearing a lot of risk for that.
Yeah, it's all your risk management stuff. We're putting it all on the line, and just
not knowing what's going to happen.
People will turn up,
yeah.
And even now, so Masters is at the time of recording about 10 days away. There will still be players who.
I've just had a ticket come through now while we're recording.
Yeah.
Lists are due tonight.
There will still be players who continue to purchase tickets.
Yeah.
So, probably between now and midnight we'll get a fair few.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Come through. Because that's just, it's the nature of, and that's one of the things I've learned is just, you just kind of have to relax and trust that they'll come. Which is really, really hard. Okay, that's probably all I've got.
Okay.
I really like the people who we get to spend time with.
Yeah. It's a really nice, decent group of human beings.
Yeah, it really is.
Everyone's pretty open and inclusive and happy, and we're all there just to do the same thing and enjoy the day.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting to celebrate the 5th anniversary of this event. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it's flown by.
Yeah, it does feel like it has, eh?
Yeah.
Well, on that slightly upbeat and nostalgic note.
Yeah, just a little bit nostalgic, thinking about where we started and where we are now.
Bright orange T-shirt with someone else's logo on it.
And now we're in bright orange T-shirts. We've each got bright orange T-shirts with our logo on it.
I want to get some new ones done up with some of the team, like the WA team logos on it as well, to reflect where the community's come to.
That would be awesome, but I just had our latest orange T-shirts done, so you probably should have mentioned that to me and taken it out of your head to somewhere where I could see it.
I'm sure we can give her back the T-shirts and get more logos put on them. That silence is a death look that if you've watched our Facebook Lives, you'll recognise. When it's pointed at you, it's a very scary look.
All right, should we come back and wrap up in a moment?
Too easy. We will be back in just a second. So that's another episode done and dusted.
Yes.
We're going to try and cover a wrap-up to Masters 2019 in the next episode.
Or Facebook Live, depending on how things go.
Well, I think doing a deep dive into some of the army lists might be kind of fun to talk about the top lists, as well as looking at who won. And
it'd be quite interesting to look at the top lists, and I know you hate the term meta, but how it compares to some of the international lists that have been winning.
Yep. And we can look at the percentages, and I was talking to someone at Varsity about the breakup of the field.
Yeah.
And my bet was 25% Space Marines, 25% of other power armor, like Chaos Space Marines and Sisters of Battle and Custodes and Blood Angels and Dark Angels and Space Wolves and Death Watch and Grey Knights and all those other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then 25% would be Eldar and Tau. And then the last 25% is everyone else. Necrons, Genestealer Cult, Tyranids, Orcs, all of those lesser Xenos races. Well, I say lesser in the context of, usage, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's my bet for the field. And once all the lists are in and all the factions are selected, we can actually generate that from down under pairings to see how close I got. So that's my bet at the moment.
Yeah, and then we've got a couple more suggestions for future episodes as well.
Modelling for advantage, that's going to be a interesting topic.
Well, one's around modelling for advantage, and one actually feels like it comes since we're being a little bit nostalgic, or I am anyway, one seems to come full circle all the way back to where I started on the podcast, which the question is a conversation on what 40k or gaming events around Australia are worth travelling to.
Well, that ties in well to some of the announcements that you'll have seen by now from Down Under Network and Down Under Pairings specifically. So that'll definitely have to be a future episode, and we might have to get Diffie onto the podcast to talk about that as well, where the idea came from and so on, because he and I have been chatting about it for a little while now privately to try and work out some of the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
And there's a pool of us who've been in that conversation, not just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think having him on for an episode in the future seems like a pretty decent plan.
Yeah, well, that's could potentially be the next 3 episodes outlined, so we should write that down somewhere so we don't forget.
No pens on the table, so we're out of luck. Have to remember.
It's all right, I'll put it in my notes in my phone.
Okay, I've got your notebook right here.
Yeah, but I'm not writing with my fingernail, so...
If you didn't see the live stream last week that we've just finished recording this week, in the future and the past...
Yep.
Be sure
the present and the past.
Be sure to check out Varsity for our final end-of-year event at Varsity in Morley on the 9th of December.
Yes.
I'm saying that now. I'm really hoping that's the right day. 90% sure it's the 9th. Yes, it is. It's the 9th.
Yeah.
So we're going to be there from about 6:30. The games will start around 7 o'clock through till 11:30. We're going to have a few giveaways that night. We're going to have Codex Battletome speed dating, where you can try out new armies that you might have always wanted to play and never got around to buying, or just wanted to try before you buy.
I'll be well into my Christmas Advent cocktails by then. So
I'll
fingers crossed they do have some cocktails at Varsity.
Look, the bar staff are amazing there, and I'm sure that they will accommodate a drink or two for you. I'm sure we can work something out.
Oh, good.
So I'll make sure I talk to Caleb before then.
Yeah, I'm not foregoing my Christmas cocktail.
So come and enjoy and celebrate the 2019 tournament season with us on the 9th of December at Varsity Project in Morley.
Mm-hmm.
$10 to play, and that includes your first drink. So it's a couple of dollars to play for the night. So if you just want to come out and hang out with us, just come out and hang out with us.
Yeah, but it will be, I think it's going to be quite fun to see how the speed dating gaming goes.
Yeah, by the time you're hearing this, the details for that should be on the event page. If you go to events on our Facebook page and then find Beer Hammer for December, you should be able to click on that, and there'll be a couple of posts about it there to explain the process and what's going to happen.
After you write the process.
It's all in my head. It's fine.
I'm just going to point out, no one else can see that.
No, it's probably for the best as well, given my head. So we hope to see you. If you can't make it to Masters, come down to Varsity. If you can make it to Masters, come down to Varsity and say hello and have a good night out. And come down and celebrate the 2019 tournament circuit season gaming events list.
Being over?
Yep. And I'll probably try and make the tickets for First Blood live that day as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I'm already thinking 2020. I'm trying to book dates and stuff at the moment.
So they're all booked.
Oh, they're all penciled in. I've got to pay all the deposits and stuff, so I've got to try and get the rest.
Get on that.
Well, yeah. Once the rest of the tickets for Masters come in, that'll make it easy, because then I can cycle the money through, because the money's got to come from somewhere.
Okay, we've got
So an endlessly rolling cycle of bills.
Yeah, bills. When will they stop bringing me bills, Mal? Points if you know what show that's from.
Jesus Christ, that's a. Oh dear. Okay.
Have we got anything else to talk about before we say goodnight?
No, we'll say goodbye.
No, I'll be saying goodnight.
Oh, okay. No, I think we're done. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you for coming on our trip down memory lane and hearing my story about the missing table numbers yet again.
Yep. Are you over that yet?
No.
Clearly not.
Never mind.
That's not even an edit. That's just her going, nope, I'm stopping.
I know. Well done me, right? Filter.
Yeah, well, there's still going to be a lot of edit, but that's okay. We will see you at Masters for 2019. If you are not playing and you have the time off, this is going out before Masters.
Okay, yeah.
This is what happens when we record too far in front. We had this conversation last time when we recorded too far in front. We will see you at Masters if you're playing. If you only have 1 day free or half a day free, or you just want to come down and check it out because you don't quite feel comfortable about entering the realm of competitive 40K, you are still more than welcome to come down and visit and say hello.
You are. So Mike and I will be, as we mentioned, will be the ones in orange.
Please don't wear orange if you're playing. It really helps us out if you don't.
So I think it was Joe who wore an orange. Joe Sands who wore an orange T-shirt to one of the events and had people going up and asking him questions all day. He said he was never making that mistake again.
No, was it Gillen as well?
Gillen.
She had a cert
for a WATC event.
Yes, it was,
Yeah,
and it looked very. It wasn't orange, but it was like a burnt.
Orange. It was orange.
Yeah. So yeah, don't wear orange. That's our colour.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't look good on us, or it doesn't look good on me. But it's
Yeah, but so we'll be the ones obviously in orange. I won't be there for some of the morning on the Saturday morning because I have a prior commitment. So if you are, I was going to say if you're female and would prefer to have another female face to see when you walk through the door, come Saturday afternoon or Sunday.
Yeah.
If you're female and you don't care about seeing other female faces, come whenever you want.
Yep. So we're there both days. Come down and say hello. Hang out with us for the day. It'll be a really fun 2 days for the players, and you can just come down and chill out and, hang out with us in between the rounds and,
One of the things that has been suggested a few times was having the lanyards for people who are prepared to be like a so if you've got someone who's new who's coming into an event, that they can see someone with a lanyard and go, oh, they're prepared to talk to me. It's okay if I go up and chat to them.
Support staff type thing.
Yeah, so still players who are, still people who are going to be part of the event, but someone who's, I guess, there to be a supportive introduction person.
Yeah, if you don't know anyone else in the room, or if it's you and your mate and neither of you know the rest of the room type stuff.
So someone who will take you around and introduce you to people and make sure you're...
We haven't done lanyards for a show bag. Maybe it's time we ordered some lanyards.
I don't know whether or not I can pull that off between now and Masters.
Yeah, probably not. We could probably get some
Don't
generic.
underestimate
Probably get
me.
some generic ones.
Yeah, I was thinking generic ones.
Bright orange lanyards.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. All right.
Say hello to me.
Yeah, we'll come up with something. Anyway, we will see you at Masters, and then hopefully we'll see you at Varsity like 2 weeks later. Stay safe. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you with the next episode.
Happy gaming, everyone.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Objective Secured, or you can email us, obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.